Welcome to the Crime for Sleep channel. Let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Story 1. I remember the silence of that old house most of all. After 3 weeks of living there alone, I had grown accustomed to the gentle creaking of the wooden floors, the occasional tap of branches against the windows, and the soft whisper of wind through the poorly sealed door frames. These sounds had become my constant companions, predictable and oddly comforting. Until that Wednesday evening in late October, when something different caught my attention. At first I couldn't place it, a faint buzzing, almost imperceptible, coming and going in 3-second intervals. I lowered the book I was reading and tilted my head, trying to locate the source. The living room was bathed in the amber glow of a single-floor lamp, casting long shadows across the antique furniture I had inherited along with the house. The buzzing came again. This time I was certain it originated from the fireplace, a grand brick structure that dominated the north wall, unused since I had moved in. Setting my book aside, I approached slowly, feeling the temperature drop with each step closer to the cold hearth. There it was again, a vibration, faint but unmistakable. I knelt before the fireplace, the rough brick pressing against my knees through my thin pajama pants. The buzzing had stopped, but something told me to investigate further. I reached for my phone and turned on its flashlight, directing the beam up the chimney. Nothing seemed unusual at first glance, just soot-stained brick and the distant square of night sky above. But then I noticed it, a small section of bricks near the bottom right corner that didn't quite match the others. The mortar looked fresher, less weathered. I pressed my fingertips against one brick, surprised to feel it give slightly under the pressure. It wasn't properly set. With minimal effort, I worked it loose, revealing a small cavity behind. The buzzing started again, louder now, definitely coming from inside the wall. One by one, I removed 4 additional bricks, setting them carefully on the hearth. My fingers were black with soot, my breathing shallow and measured. The final brick came free, revealing a small package wrapped in cloth. I hesitated before touching it. The house had belonged to my great-aunt Margaret, a woman I had met only twice before she passed 3 months ago. The lawyer had seemed surprised when her will was read, leaving everything to her beloved grandniece. No one had expected it, least of all me. I knew precious little about her life, her habits, her secrets. The buzzing started again, and I finally reached for the package, unwrapping the cloth with careful movements. Inside was a phone, not a modern smartphone, but a basic burner model with a physical keypad and a small screen. The screen was cracked in one corner but still illuminated, showing a low battery warning. That explained the intermittent buzzing, a dying battery desperately signaling for attention. The phone was password protected, but the lock screen displayed a notification for one video. My finger hovered over the notification, a strange reluctance holding me back. Why would someone hide a phone in a chimney? And why was it suddenly alerting now, weeks after I had moved in? I took a deep breath and pressed the notification. To my surprise, it opened without requiring a password, perhaps an oversight in the phone's security settings. The video began to play automatically. The footage was dark at first, grainy and poorly focused. As my eyes adjusted to the dim quality, I recognized the location with a sudden chill spreading across my skin. It was my bedroom. More specifically, it was filmed from the corner where an antique wardrobe stood, providing a clear view of my bed, the doorway, and the window. The timestamp in the corner indicated this video was recorded 3 months ago, before my great-aunt's death, before I had ever set foot in this house. The room looked different then, floral bedding instead of my solid blue, different curtains, a small desk where my reading chair now sat. For several minutes, nothing happened in the video, just an empty bedroom, occasionally shifting as the hidden camera adjusted to changes in light. Then, the bedroom door opened. My great-aunt Margaret entered, moving slowly with the aid of a cane I had found in the hall closet. She looked anxious, continually glancing over her shoulder as she crossed to the nightstand and removed something from the drawer, papers of some kind, which she quickly folded and placed in the pocket of her cardigan. She turned toward the camera then, her expression changing to one of determination. She approached the wardrobe, her hand outstretched as if reaching for the camera itself, when the video suddenly cut to black. I waited, expecting more footage, but the screen simply returned to the main menu. The phone buzzed once more in my hand, the battery icon now flashing red. With trembling fingers, I navigated to the call history. Empty. Text messages, also empty. Contacts showed just one entry labeled insurance, with a number I didn't recognize. Before I could investigate further, the screen went black. The battery had finally died. I sat back on my heels, the cold from the brick floor seeping through my clothes. Questions flooded my mind, each one branching into three more. Who had placed this camera in my great-aunt's bedroom? Why had she seemed afraid? What were the papers she had hidden? And perhaps most troublingly, why had the phone started alerting now, weeks after I had moved in? I placed the dead phone on the coffee table and moved through the house, checking windows and doors, drawing curtains closed. The silence that had once felt comforting now seemed loaded with watchful potential. I found myself imagining eyes in every shadow, observers behind every pane of glass. Sleep eluded me that night as I lay in bed, the same bed from the video, though I had changed the mattress and bedding. I couldn't shake the feeling that the camera in the wardrobe had been just one of many, that my inheritance came with unseen strings attached. The next morning I plugged the burner phone into a charger I found in a kitchen drawer. It took nearly an hour before the screen flickered back to life, displaying the same lock screen. This time I was determined to bypass the password. After several failed attempts with obvious combinations, my great-aunt's birthday, her address, her husband's name, I tried the last 4 digits of the single contact labeled insurance. The phone unlocked immediately. There were no additional videos, no explanatory texts, just a drafts folder containing a single unsent message. If you're reading this, I didn't make it. Check behind the painting in the dining room. Trust no one, especially not him. I moved to the dining room with cautious steps, approaching the only painting on the wall, a pastoral landscape in muted tones that I had barely noticed before. When I lifted it from its hook, I discovered a small wall safe concealed behind it. The combination eluded me for days. I tried every significant number I could think of related to my great-aunt, but nothing worked. It wasn't until I remembered the timestamp on the video, the exact date and time, that the safe finally yielded to my touch. Inside was a single manila envelope containing property deeds, insurance policies, and a handwritten letter addressed to me. My great-aunt's elegant script filled 3 pages with a story I could scarcely believe, of threats, of surveillance, of a decades-long dispute over land boundaries that had escalated to dangerous proportions. Her neighbor, a man I had yet to meet despite living next door for weeks, had been systematically intimidating her, attempting to force her to sell portions of her property that contained valuable water rights. The cameras, she wrote, had appeared shortly after she had refused his final offer. The phone had been her attempt to gather evidence of the intrusions. The letter ended with a warning. He knows I've left everything to you. He'll be watching, waiting for you to make the same mistake I did, trusting that the law will protect you. It won't. The sheriff is his cousin. The lawyer is his friend. Be smarter than I was. I folded the letter carefully, returning it to the envelope. Through the dining room window, I could see the neighboring property, a large house set back from the road, partially obscured by tall pine trees. A light was on in an upstairs window, a silhouette briefly visible against the curtain. The buzzing started again, not from the burner phone still clutched in my hand, but from my own cell phone in my pocket. An unknown number. I let it ring through to voicemail. The message was brief, a man's voice, deep and cordial, just calling to welcome you to the neighborhood. I was a good friend of your aunt's. Perhaps we could meet for coffee sometime. I have a proposition I think you'll find quite interesting. I deleted the message but saved the number. Evidence, I thought, just like my great aunt had been collecting. I returned to the fireplace and carefully replaced the bricks, concealing the hiding spot once more. Then I went upstairs, opened my laptop, and began researching security systems with off-site monitoring. The house was silent again, but I no longer found comfort in the quiet. Instead, I found myself straining to hear the next unexpected sound, the next clue in a mystery I had inherited along with these old wooden floors and creaking door frames. A mystery that I was beginning to suspect had already cost one life. And as darkness fell outside my windows that evening, I couldn't help but wonder if someone was watching me through the glass, waiting for me to make a mistake. Or perhaps they were already inside, hidden behind the walls, recording my every move. Just like the phone hidden in the chimney. Story 2, during a genealogy test, her results were flagged for irregularities. A few days later, a man from the lab showed up at her door with photos of a woman who looked exactly like her, taken from traffic cameras in another state. The kicker, that woman had never submitted a test. There's something uniquely comforting about a rainy Tuesday afternoon in October. The soft patter against my office window created a rhythm that matched the tapping of my pen against the weathered leather notebook I've carried for 15 years. I remember the weight of it in my hands, the smell of old paper mixed with the earthy scent of fresh coffee steaming beside my keyboard. I wasn't expecting any visitors that day. Most people don't seek out private investigators when the weather turns. But at precisely 3:17 p.m., a knock came at my door. She stood in the doorway, rainwater still clinging to her jacket, Anna Peterson, 34, genetics counselor, with eyes that carried the unmistakable weight of someone whose world had just tilted on its axis. The manila envelope she clutched had bent slightly from her grip, already showing the wear of someone who had opened and closed it countless times, studying its contents until the edges softened. "I think I'm being replaced," she said, her voice barely audible above the rain. I motioned to the chair across from my desk, the vinyl creaking softly as she settled into it. The overhead light cast shadows across her face, highlighting the sleepless nights etched beneath her eyes. "Tell me everything," I said, opening my notebook to a fresh page. "Start from the beginning." 3 weeks earlier, Anna had submitted a routine DNA sample to Genetic Legacy, one of those ancestry companies that promises to map your family history with a simple cheek swab. She'd been curious about her maternal grandmother's side, nothing more than casual interest, the kind of thing millions of Americans do every year. The test was supposed to take 8 weeks to process, she explained, her fingers tracing invisible patterns on the envelope in her lap. But after only 10 days, I received a call from someone claiming to work in their verification department, a Dr. Marcus Elliott. Dr. Elliott had spoken slowly, carefully selecting his words. The lab had detected what he called anomalies in her sample, nothing concerning, he assured her, just something that required additional testing. Anna hadn't thought much of it until 3 days later when her doorbell rang just after dusk. "He was standing on my porch," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Dr. Elliott, he wasn't supposed to know where I lived." The man had apologized for the intrusion, but insisted that what he needed to show her couldn't wait. Inside the envelope he carried were 8 photographs, traffic camera images from Phoenix, Arizona, dated over the previous 6 months. Anna had never been to Phoenix. She slid the envelope across my desk now, her fingers lingering on it momentarily before letting go. I carefully extracted the contents, 8 color printouts, slightly grainy but clear enough. In each one was a woman who could have been Anna's twin, same heart-shaped face, same chestnut hair cut in a shoulder-length bob, same slight tilt of the head as she waited at traffic lights. "This isn't me," Anna said, her voice firmer now. "I was in Boston during all these dates. I have proof, work records, credit card statements, witnesses." Dr. Elliott had explained something that sounded like science fiction. The DNA sample Anna had submitted matched perfectly with trace DNA evidence collected from 3 different crime scenes in Phoenix. Minor thefts, nothing violent, a jewelry store, an electronics retailer, and an art gallery. In each case, the perpetrator had been careful, methodical, leaving almost nothing behind. Almost. "He told me something impossible," Anna continued, pulling out a small digital recorder from her pocket. "He recorded our conversation. Listen." She pressed play and a man's voice filled the room, calm and clinical. The voice analysis from the jewelry store's security system matches your vocal patterns with 97.2% accuracy. "It's you, Ms. Peterson, or someone genetically identical to you, someone who shouldn't exist." The rain grew heavier outside as Anna explained the rest. Dr. Elliott had confided that he'd gone against company policy by coming to her. Genetic Legacy had government contracts she hadn't known about when she signed their terms of service, contracts that gave certain agencies priority access to their database. Someone else had been alerted to the match before him, someone who had already started inquiries into Anna's life. The day after his visit, I noticed a black sedan parked across from my apartment, she said, her voice steadying as she recounted the details. The same car followed me to work the next morning, and then there were the phone calls, my cell phone ringing once, then hanging up when I answered. I studied the photos again, noting details Anna hadn't mentioned. The woman in Phoenix wore clothes similar to Anna's style but not identical. Her posture was a fraction more rigid, and in one image, caught in profile, there was something about her eyes, a hardness that Anna's didn't possess. "Do you have siblings?" I asked, though I already suspected the answer. "Only child," she confirmed, "and before you ask, no, my mother never mentioned twins. I was born at Massachusetts General, full medical records, no mysteries there." I tapped my pen against the notebook, the rhythmic sound almost drowned out by the rain. "What did you do next?" Anna had done what any reasonable person would do. She'd contacted the Phoenix police, explaining the situation. They'd been polite but dismissive. Without more to go on than traffic camera footage and the word of a geneticist who had violated his company's privacy policy, they couldn't open an investigation. 2 days ago, someone broke into my apartment, she said, pulling out her phone to show me photographs of subtle disturbances, books slightly out of order, a drawer not fully closed, the corner of a rug turned up. Nothing was taken. It was like they were looking for something specific. Or studying her habits, I thought but didn't say. That same night, Anna had received an email from an address she didn't recognize. The message contained a single line: "She's not you, you're not her, only one of you was meant to be." The implications hung in the air between us, heavy as the storm clouds outside. What Anna was describing sounded like something from a conspiracy thriller: identical DNA, a doppelganger committing crimes, shadowy surveillance. Yet the evidence before me was concrete: the photos, the voice analysis, the break-in. I pulled out my own recorder and set it on the desk between us. "I need you to tell me everything again from the beginning, every detail, no matter how small." As Anna spoke, I noticed a pattern in her story that she hadn't recognized herself. Dr. Elliot had only shown her evidence of her double committing crimes, but the traffic camera photos spanned 6 months. Surely this mysterious look-alike did more than just steal. She would have had to live somewhere, interact with people, exist in the world. After Anna left, promising to return the next day with her complete medical records, I sat in the growing darkness of my office. The rain had slowed to a gentle mist, casting a halo around the streetlights outside. I pulled up my laptop and searched for Genetic Legacy. Their website was professional, corporate, with the expected privacy policies and scientific explanations. But something caught my eye on their About Us page, a small logo in the corner, easily overlooked. It belonged to Helix Innovations, a biotech company that had made headlines 5 years earlier for advancements in genetic research before suddenly going quiet. There had been rumors of military applications, quickly denied and buried under non-disclosure agreements. I reached for my phone, scrolling through contacts until I found him, an old colleague who now worked in cybersecurity for a healthcare conglomerate. If anyone could dig deeper into Genetic Legacy's connections, it would be him. As I waited for him to answer, I looked again at the photos of Anna's double. In the last image, partially obscured by the car window, there appeared to be a small birthmark on her neck, identical to the one I had noticed on Anna during our meeting. Some things can't be coincidental. The phone connected and I spoke softly into the receiver. "Hey, it's me. I need everything you can find on something called Helix Innovations. And while you're at it, see what you can dig up on a Dr. Marcus Elliot." I hung up and returned to the photographs, spreading them across my desk in chronological order. The woman, whoever she was, had been in Phoenix for at least 6 months. 6 months of living another life with Anna's face, Anna's DNA, Anna's voice. "Only one of you was meant to be." The words from the email echoed in my mind as I stared at the images. Which one was the original? Could they both be copies of something else entirely? The questions multiplied as night settled fully over the city. In my 15 years as an investigator, I'd seen cases of mistaken identity, twins separated at birth, elaborate frauds and impersonations. But I'd never encountered anything like this, a perfect genetic match living parallel lives across the country from each other. One a law-abiding citizen, the other a careful criminal. As I finally prepared to leave the office, my phone buzzed with a text message from my contact. Helix went dark after a government acquisition. Official records sealed, but Elliot isn't who he claims to be. Call me. I locked the photos in my desk drawer, but the image of the 2 identical women stayed with me as I walked to my car through the misty evening. Somewhere in Phoenix, a woman with Anna's face was going about her life, perhaps unaware that questions about her existence were being asked 2,000 miles away. Or perhaps she knew exactly what she was and why she had been created. The following morning would bring answers, or at least more questions. But one thing was already clear. In the world of genetic science, some boundaries were never meant to be crossed. And once they had been, there was no going back to not knowing. Only one of you was meant to be. But which one? Story 3. I still remember the way the late afternoon light slanted through the windows that day. Golden and rich, it spilled across the hardwood floors of apartment 714, making the space feel warm and inviting. The real estate agent, or who I believed was the real estate agent, checked his watch as I ran my fingers along the smooth countertop of the kitchen island. "Take your time," he said softly. "No rush at all." There was something about his patience that I appreciated. In a city where apartments vanished within hours of being listed, his unhurried manner was refreshing. I wandered toward the windows, drawn to the view that stretched across the city skyline. 7 floors up, the perspective was perfect, high enough to escape the street noise, but not so elevated that the city lost its human scale. "The previous tenant left rather suddenly," he mentioned casually as I tested the bathroom faucet. "The water ran clear and strong. Corporate relocation. Their loss is your gain." I nodded, already imagining my furniture in the space, already feeling at home in a way I hadn't in my previous 3 apartments. There was something about this place that felt right, like it had been waiting for me. "I'll take it," I said, the words tumbling out before I could second-guess myself. He smiled, opening his leather portfolio. "Excellent choice, Ms. Reeves. I just need you to fill out these forms, and we can get you moved in by the weekend." It wasn't until 3 weeks later that the first droplet fell. I was preparing dinner, slicing vegetables for a stir-fry, when I felt it, cold and unexpected, on the back of my neck. Looking up, I noticed a small, darkening circle on the ceiling. Within minutes, it had grown to the size of a dinner plate. I called the property management number listed on my lease agreement. After 3 rings, a man answered. "Westbrook Properties, this is Daniel speaking. How can I help you?" "Hi Daniel, this is Claire Reeves in apartment 714. I think I have a leak coming from the unit above me." The silence that followed lasted perhaps 5 seconds, but it felt much longer. "I'm sorry," he finally said, his voice carrying a note of confusion. "Did you say apartment 714 at the Parkview building?" "Yes, that's right. I moved in 3 weeks ago. There's water coming through my ceiling." Another pause. "Ms. Reeves," he continued slowly, "I'm looking at our system right now, and apartment 714 has been vacant for almost 5 years." A cold sensation, different from the water droplet, spread across my skin. "That's impossible," I replied, hearing the slight tremor in my voice. "I'm standing in it right now. I signed a lease with your agent, a Mr. Collins." "We don't have anyone named Collins working for Westbrook Properties." I rushed to my desk drawer where I'd stored the lease papers, pulling them out with trembling hands. Flipping to the signature page, I felt my breath catch. Where I clearly remembered seeing Thomas Collins in neat handwriting, there was now just an illegible scrawl. My eyes darted to the emergency contact information, a phone number I had assumed was the property management's direct line. It was my own cell phone number. "Ms. Reeves, are you still there?" "Yes," I whispered, staring at the document. "I'm going to need to call you back." That night I couldn't sleep. The leak had stopped as mysteriously as it had started, leaving only a damp circle on the ceiling. I sat in my living room, lights on, lease paper spread across the coffee table, trying to make sense of what was happening. The rent checks I'd written, who had cashed them, the keys I was using, who had given them to me. The next morning I knocked on my neighbor's door in 712. A woman in her 60s answered, surprised to see someone in the hallway. "I'm sorry to bother you," I began. "I just moved into 714, and I was wondering if you knew anything about the apartment or the previous tenants." She studied my face with narrowed eyes. 714 has been empty since that terrible business with the Schiefers. Nobody's lived there since. The Schiefers, I felt my mouth go dry. Young couple, lovely people. He was an architect. She taught music at the community college. She lowered her voice. They were both found dead in that apartment. Carbon monoxide poisoning, they said. Faulty ventilation in the fireplace. I hadn't even noticed there was a fireplace. I thanked her and returned to my apartment, immediately walking to what I had assumed was a decorative alcove in the living room. Behind the small bookshelf I had placed there, I found the sealed opening of a fireplace. That afternoon, I visited the building superintendent's office in the basement. The elderly man looked up from his crossword puzzle, adjusting his glasses. "What can I do for you?" he asked. "I need to know about apartment 714, I said. "I've been living there for 3 weeks. His expression didn't change. Nobody lives in 714. Management can't rent it out because of the history. But I'm living there. Someone gave me keys, had me sign a lease." He set down his pencil. "Mind if I see those keys?" I placed them on his desk. He picked them up, turned them over in his palm, then placed them back down. "These aren't building keys," he said quietly. "Our keys have a special security pattern cut into them. These are just regular keys that happen to fit the lock." "That's not possible," I insisted, though doubt was creeping in. "Come with me," he said, standing up with a slight groan. "Let's go look at this apartment of yours." We rode the elevator in silence. When we reached the 7th floor, I led him to 714 and inserted my key. The door swung open. "See," I gestured to my furniture, my clothes hanging in the open closet, dishes drying beside the sink. The superintendent's face had gone pale. He stepped inside cautiously, looking around as if seeing ghosts. "This apartment was sealed after the investigation," he murmured. "The locks were changed. No one should have been able to get in here." "Well, someone did," I said, "and they rented it to me." He walked to the kitchen counter where I had left that morning's coffee mug and touched it gingerly, as if confirming it was real. "Did you pay first and last month's rent?" he asked suddenly. "Yes, and a security deposit." "Linkash." I nodded slowly. "And the man who showed you the apartment, can you describe him?" I closed my eyes, trying to recall details. Mid-40s, well-dressed, dark hair graying at the temples. He had a small scar near his right eyebrow. The superintendent's face went even paler. "That sounds like Richard Schiefer, the man who died here 5 years ago." Over the next few days, I learned more pieces of the puzzle. The building's security cameras showed me entering the building 3 weeks ago, alone. They showed me carrying boxes, furniture, bags, but always by myself. No real estate agent, no Mr. Collins. The property management company had no record of my tenancy. The bank confirmed my checks had never been cashed. They were still sitting in my account, the funds never withdrawn. Yet I had keys, I had furniture in an apartment that was supposed to be sealed. I had memories of signing papers with a man who had died 5 years earlier. The police were baffled, the building owners were terrified of liability, and I didn't know what to believe anymore. Yesterday I decided to examine the fireplace more closely. Behind the sealed cover, I found an old metal box wedged into the flue. Inside were two things: a set of building keys identical to the ones the superintendent had shown me, and a handwritten note on yellowed paper. To whoever finds this, we were not the first, we will not be the last. The apartment chooses. It opens itself to those who need a transitional space. When you're ready to move on, leave your keys for the next person. It was signed Richard and Emma Schieffer, dated 5 years ago. I'm writing this account now as I sit in apartment 714, watching the sunset paint the walls with that same golden light I fell in love with on that first day. The leak never returned. The property management company has no record of my existence here. According to official records, this apartment remains vacant. Tomorrow I will leave. I found a new place across town, a real place with a verifiable lease and a management company I've researched thoroughly. I'll leave my keys in the metal box in the fireplace, just as the note instructed. Sometimes I wonder if Richard Schieffer ever really died, or if he simply moved on when the apartment was done with him. Sometimes I wonder if I was ever really here at all. But mostly I wonder about the next person who will walk through that door, admiring the view, feeling that inexplicable sense of belonging, never questioning why such a perfect apartment was available in a city where nothing stays vacant for long. Story 4, I still remember the first time I stepped into that room. It was late October, the kind of autumn evening when the air feels thin and brittle, like it might shatter if you breathe too deeply. The rental house had seemed perfect, a Victorian with good bones, as they say, tucked away on a quiet street where the maple trees were shedding their amber leaves in lazy spirals. The bedroom was on the second floor, facing east, spacious, with high ceilings that gave it an almost cathedral-like quality. Light poured through tall windows, painting golden rectangles across hardwood floors that creaked just enough to remind you of their age. The walk-in closet was a pleasant surprise, rare in these old houses. Yes, everything seemed perfect. Until I noticed the door. Not immediately, of course. It wasn't until dusk had settled completely and I was preparing for my first night in the new place that I saw it. The bedroom door had a lock, which wasn't unusual in itself. What caught my attention was its position, mounted on the outside of the door. The kind of lock you'd use to keep something in, not intruders out. I ran my fingers over the brass fixture, feeling its cool, smooth surface. It looked older than the other hardware in the house, possibly original to the building. When I pulled the door nearly shut to examine it more closely, that's when I saw them, the words scratched into the wood on the inside of the door just below eye level, "Don't fall asleep." The lettering was small, deliberate, not the work of a child or a moment's impulse. Someone had taken their time, carving each letter with precision. I should have left that night, packed my few unpacked belongings, and found a hotel. That would have been the rational response. Instead, my curiosity, the same quality that had led me into investigative journalism, took hold. There was a story here waiting to be uncovered. The rental agency had mentioned nothing unusual about the property. The house had been vacant for nearly 8 months before I signed the lease. The agent, a thin woman with perpetually pursed lips, had seemed eager, perhaps too eager, to find a tenant. The price had been surprisingly reasonable for the neighborhood. That first night I slept with the bedroom door wide open, wedged securely with a chair from the dining room. Sleep came fitfully, interrupted by the house's unfamiliar sounds, the tick of radiators, the subtle settling of wooden beams, the occasional scrape of tree branches against windows. In the morning light, everything seemed less ominous. I convinced myself the scratched message was a prank, perhaps left by teenagers during the property's vacant period. Still, I couldn't shake the unease that had settled over me, a thin film that clung despite my rational dismissals. I began making inquiries the following day. Casual conversations with neighbors yielded little beyond standard pleasantries and recycled local history. The house had changed hands several times over the past decade. No one spoke of anything unusual, though I noticed a certain hesitation when I mentioned my specific address. The county records office proved more illuminating. I spent hours poring over property documents, tracing ownership back through time. The house had been built in 1894 for a doctor and his family. It changed hands in 1926, then again in 1953. The next transfer wasn't until 1981, an unusually long period for a single owner. That owner had been Eleanor Marsh, a widow who had purchased the property shortly after her husband's death. She had lived there alone for 28 years before passing away in the house at the age of 84. The property had then been sold to a young couple, the Hargroves, who owned it for just 11 months before selling suddenly and moving out of state. After the Hargroves came 3 more owners in rapid succession, none staying longer than 2 years. Then the current owner, a real estate investment company based out of Chicago, which had been renting it out for the past 4 years. The pattern was curious, long-term ownership followed by a series of short stays. It wasn't definitive evidence of anything sinister, but it raised questions that my professional instincts couldn't ignore. The local newspaper archives offered the next piece of the puzzle. Eleanor Marsh's obituary mentioned that she had been found deceased in her bedroom after neighbors noticed mail accumulating. It listed no surviving relatives. There was nothing particularly noteworthy about her death, natural causes at an advanced age, but I couldn't help connecting it to the room where I now slept. The Hargroves proved more difficult to track down. Their departure had warranted no newspaper coverage, and social media searches yielded nothing useful. It wasn't until I spoke with Mrs. Leeton, an elderly woman who lived 3 houses down, that I learned more about them. "Oh, the Hargroves," she said, her voice dropping slightly as she invited me onto her porch. The afternoon light caught the steam rising from her teacup. Young couple, expecting their first child when they moved in. They were so excited about that big bedroom upstairs, planned to make it a nursery. She paused, her weathered fingers tightening around her cup. They left so suddenly, didn't even have a moving truck, just packed what would fit in their car and left before dawn. Sarah, Mrs. Hargrove, she came to say goodbye. She seemed frightened. Wouldn't tell me why they were leaving, just that they couldn't stay another night. Did she mention anything about the bedroom, the one with the lock on the outside of the door? I asked. Mrs. Leeton's eyes widened slightly. The lock is still there. I thought they would have removed it after what happened with the Marsh boy. "The Marsh boy," I prompted when she fell silent. She sighed, looking past me toward the house. Eleanor Marsh didn't just live there alone. She had a son, Thomas. He wasn't right, as people used to say, had episodes where he'd become dangerous, mostly to himself. This was before they had good medications for such things. She kept him at home instead of committing him to an institution. That bedroom, it was his. The lock was to keep him safe during his episodes. The pieces were beginning to align, forming a picture I wasn't sure I wanted to see clearly. What happened to Thomas? He died in that room. They found him and Alina together. The official story was that she passed first, natural causes, and without his caretaker he couldn't manage. But there were rumors. Some said the positions they were found in suggested otherwise. That night I stood in the bedroom doorway, staring at the lock with new understanding. The scratched warning took on new significance. I considered moving to a different room, but a strange compulsion kept me there. I needed to understand what had happened in this space. I began experiencing unusual occurrences, nothing dramatic enough to send me fleeing, but unsettling nonetheless. Objects moved between evening and morning. The temperature in the room would drop suddenly, even when the rest of the house remained warm. And sometimes, in the liminal space between wakefulness and sleep, I could swear I heard soft scratching sounds from inside the closet. On my 7th night in the house, I decided to test a theory. I positioned my phone to record the room while I slept, the camera angled to capture most of the space, including the closet door. I left the bedroom door open as usual, secured with a chair, and eventually drifted into uneasy sleep. The recording revealed nothing unusual until approximately 3:17 a.m. The audio picked up first, a soft scraping sound, followed by what might have been labored breathing. Then the closet door moved, opening just a few inches. The space between door and frame appeared empty, just darkness. For nearly 20 minutes, nothing else happened. Then the door slowly closed again. I watched the recording 5 times, trying to identify any natural explanation, air currents, house settling, tricks of light and shadow. I found none. That afternoon, I visited the County Historical Society, searching for photographs of the Marsh family. In a collection from the 1960s, I found what I was looking for, a family portrait showing Alina, her husband Richard, and a young man who must have been Thomas. He appeared to be in his 20s, with a soft, undefined face and eyes that didn't quite focus on the camera. His posture was rigid, hands clenched at his sides. The archivist noticed my interest. "The Marsh family," she said quietly. "Sad story." "I'm living in their house," I admitted. "I'm trying to understand its history." She studied me for a moment, then disappeared into a back room. When she returned, she carried a thin file folder. "These aren't officially part of our collection. They're newspaper clippings and notes that didn't make it into the public record." She hesitated. "There are things about Thomas Marsh that the family worked hard to keep quiet." The file contained police reports detailing incidents involving Thomas, violent episodes, self-harm, destruction of property. But most disturbing was a handwritten statement from a housekeeper who had worked for the Marshes in the early 1970s. She described finding bizarre scratches and writings all over Thomas's room, hidden behind furniture and inside the closet. Messages that made no sense except for one recurring phrase, "It comes when I sleep." I returned to the house as sunset painted the sky in watercolor hues of orange and purple. Standing in the bedroom, Thomas's bedroom, I began methodically examining every surface. I moved furniture, peered behind the radiator cover, checked under the window seats. In the closet behind where clothes would normally hang, I found them, dozens of scratched messages covering the back wall. Most were illegible now, faded with time or painted over, but enough remained to chill my blood. "It waits in the dark. Don't close your eyes. It wants inside." And then, scratched larger than the rest, "Mother knows it's real." I spent that night in a hotel. The following day, I gave notice to the rental agency. The agent seemed unsurprised, almost resigned, as if she'd been expecting my call. When I mentioned Thomas Marsh, she quickly ended the conversation. Before I left the house for good, I did one final thing. I removed the lock from the bedroom door, not just unlocking it, but unscrewing the entire mechanism from the wood. As I worked, I could feel a heaviness in the air around me, a pressure that seemed to pulse with silent disapproval. The last thing I saw as I walked out was the bedroom door, slowly swinging closed despite the absence of any breeze. I still drive by the house occasionally. New tenants moved in 3 months ago, another young couple drawn by the spacious rooms and attractive price. Sometimes I think about knocking on their door, about telling them what I discovered, but would they believe me? Or would they need to find the scratched warnings themselves, to feel the weight of unseen eyes watching them drift towards sleep? I wonder if they've noticed yet that the bedroom door, the one that once locked from the outside, now never quite stays open, no matter what they place against it. I wonder if they've begun to hear the scratching from inside the closet growing louder each night. And I wonder if they've discovered yet what Thomas knew, what Alina finally learned, and what I came too close to understanding, that in that room something waits for you to close your eyes, something that has all night to find its way in. Something that's been waiting a very long time. Story 5. I've been a detective for 17 years, but some cases still cling to me like morning mist that refuses to burn away. The Everlie case is one of those puzzle where each piece seemed to fit until you realized the entire picture was wrong. The office was quiet that morning when the call came in. September light filtered through half-closed blinds, casting long shadows across my cluttered desk. A woman's voice on the line, steady but threaded with unease. Rebecca Everlie, 28, newly hired at Meridian Technical Solutions. Her words came carefully measured, as if she was reading from a script she'd rehearsed to keep herself composed. "I think I'm being watched," she said, "but it's complicated." When people say it's complicated, it usually is. I invited her to come in, and hours later, she sat across from me in our interview room. Not the sterile, intimidating box you see on television, but a space designed for comfort, soft lighting, comfortable chairs, a window overlooking a small courtyard where sparrows gathered around a bird feeder. Rebecca was tall with dark hair pulled back into a tight ponytail. Her fingers kept adjusting the sleeve of her blazer as she spoke. "I started at Meridian last Monday," she explained, her voice careful and measured. "Standard first day ID photo, paperwork, tour of the building. They gave me a welcome packet." She placed a manila folder on the table between us, sliding it forward with 2 fingers as if it might burn her. I opened it carefully, noting the typical onboarding materials, benefits information, employee handbook, parking permit. But tucked between the company directory and a map of the office complex was a sealed envelope, off-white and weightier than the rest. Across the front, in black block letters, "Internal surveillance access approved." "I thought it was a mistake," Rebecca continued, watching me examine the envelope. "That it was meant for someone else in HR or security, but it had my employee ID number handwritten in the corner." I slid out the contents, 5 glossy photographs, each with a timestamp and location code printed in the bottom right corner. What I saw made my stomach tight. The first showed a kitchen with white cabinets and a blue tile backsplash. A woman, Rebecca, stood at the counter chopping vegetables. The second, the same woman sitting on a gray couch reading a book, her legs tucked underneath her. The third, Rebecca asleep in bed, the soft glow of a bedside lamp illuminating her face. "These are all from inside your home," I said, not really a question. Yes, her voice was barely above a whisper now. My apartment, but I've never had security cameras installed. Never. The timestamps showed the photos were taken over a span of 3 months all before she'd even applied to work at Meridian. The final photo was dated just 2 weeks prior. Have you noticed anything unusual at your apartment? Signs of entry, things moved. She shook her head slowly. I've checked everything. The locks are untouched, windows secure, nothing missing or out of place. I made notes in my pad, the scratch of my pen against paper oddly loud in the quiet room. Tell me about Meridian. How did you find this job? They found me, she said. A recruiter reached out through my LinkedIn profile. The offer was generous, too generous looking back. Rebecca had been a data analyst at a smaller firm. Meridian had offered her a 30% salary increase, flexible hours, and comprehensive benefits. The kind of opportunity that doesn't raise questions, it silences them. After finding these, she continued, I started looking more closely at everything. The employee handbook mentions a comprehensive security monitoring system for all staff, but I assumed that meant at the office. And there's a clause in my contract about consent to digital and physical surveillance measures as deemed necessary by security protocols. Did you sign it? Yes, she looked down at her hands. I didn't think twice. These contracts are always full of legal jargon. I spent the next week digging into Meridian Technical Solutions. On paper, they developed security software for corporate clients' firewalls, intrusion detection, that sort of thing. Their headquarters occupied a glass and steel building downtown, 15 floors of modern architectural prowess. Their CEO, Martin Greaves, had a reputation for innovation and privacy advocacy. The irony wasn't lost on me. Meridian had no history of complaints, no lawsuits from former employees, nothing that would indicate something sinister. But a company that clean often has resources to stay that way. I spoke with a friend at the cybersecurity division, Detective Laura Moss. She agreed to examine Rebecca's laptop and phone for signs of compromise. Nothing obvious, she told me 3 days later, her voice carrying the soft lilt of someone who's been staring at code for too long. But there's an application running in the background of her phone that I can't identify. It's disguised as a system process. Spyware. More sophisticated than that, Lara replied. It doesn't just monitor, it seems to be capable of accessing the camera and microphone remotely. But here's the strange part. The app's code signature suggests it was installed at the factory level, before she even purchased the phone. That detail settled in my mind like a cold weight. This wasn't opportunistic surveillance. This was targeted and premeditated. I met Rebecca at a coffee shop 2 blocks from her apartment the following morning. Steam rose from her untouched cup as she listened to what we'd found. I don't understand, she said finally. Why me? I'm nobody. I don't have access to sensitive information. I don't know state secrets. Sometimes it's not about who you are, I replied, watching a barista wipe down a nearby table with slow, circular motions. Sometimes it's about what you represent or who you can lead them to. We discussed her family, parents in Oregon, younger brother in graduate school, her friends, mostly former classmates from university, her romantic history, a 2-year relationship that ended amicably 6 months ago. Nothing stood out as a red flag. Then I asked about her previous job. Arroyo Analytics, she said. Small firm, but we had some interesting contracts. mostly data analysis for insurance companies, retail chains, nothing classified. Any government contracts. She hesitated, her finger tracing the rim of her cup. One, a short-term project with the Department of Energy, statistical analysis of power grid vulnerabilities. And there it was, the thread I'd been searching for. Further investigation revealed that 3 other former Arroyo employees who'd worked on that same DOE project had also been recruited by Meridian within the past year, all with unusually generous offers, all now working in separate departments with seemingly no connection to their previous energy grid work. When I tried to access the DOE contract details, I hit a wall of classified restrictions. My request for information was denied, then mysteriously, the record of my request itself disappeared from the system. I called Rebecca on a secure line we'd established. "I need you to continue working at Meridian as if nothing's wrong," I told her, "but I'm going to need something from you." The risk was calculated but significant. Rebecca agreed to install a modified version of the same monitoring software we'd found on her phone onto her work computer. It would allow us to see what Meridian was seeing. 3 days later at 2:17 a.m., the program activated. Someone remotely accessed Rebecca's work computer, not to monitor her work, but to use her credentials to download files from a secure server. Files related to the power grid vulnerability study she'd participated in at Arroyo. The access came from within Meridian's building, from an office on the 14th floor, an office assigned to Chief Security Officer Lawrence Crane. The next morning, I requested a warrant to search Crane's office and home. Judge Winters, a woman known for her careful consideration of evidence, reviewed our findings and granted the warrant with unusual speed. Crane's office was immaculate, too immaculate. No personal items, no photos, nothing to suggest the space belonged to anyone specific. His home told a different story. Hidden behind a false wall in his study, we found servers humming quietly, storing terabytes of surveillance data, not just on Rebecca, but on 17 other Meridian employees, all former contractors on various government projects. Lawrence Crane was not at home when we arrived. He hasn't been found since. His real identity remains unknown. Fingerprints and DNA matched no records in any database we could access. The photographs he'd used on his Meridian ID and company website have been run through facial recognition software with no matches. Rebecca Everly resigned from Meridian the day after our search. The company issued a statement expressing shock and claiming no knowledge of Crane's activities. Their cooperation with our investigation has been perfect, too perfect, perhaps. The kind of cooperation that feels practiced, as if they've prepared for this contingency. The DOE has since classified all details of the power grid vulnerability study. The other former Arroyo employees have been placed under protective surveillance, the legitimate kind, with their full knowledge and consent. As for Rebecca, she's moved to a new apartment in a different city. She checks for cameras daily, she tells me, keeps her curtains drawn. She started a new job at a small local company with no government contracts. I still think about the Everly case on quiet mornings when light filters through my office blinds. I wonder what information was so valuable that someone would orchestrate such an elaborate scheme to access it. I wonder who Lawrence Crane really was and who he worked for. But mostly, I wonder how many other welcome packets are being handed to new employees somewhere right now, with sealed envelopes tucked between the pages. How many other people are being watched through windows they thought were private? How many files are being stored in names that don't belong to those who created them? Sometimes the most disturbing truth isn't what we discover. It's what remains hidden. Story 6. At first it was small things, missing snacks, shifting picture frames. Then one night the back panel of the closet fell loose, revealing a tunnel. At the end, a mattress, a stack of empty journals, and a recent photo of her asleep, taken from inches away. The call came in on a Tuesday morning. A woman's voice, steady but threaded with something I'd learned to recognize as contained panic. I've been a detective with the Headington Police Department for 17 years, and you develop an ear for the different tones of distress. I need someone to come look at my house, she said. I think someone has been living inside my walls. The late October rain tapped against the windows of my department-issued sedan as I pulled up to 2417 Maple Street. The house was a 1920s craftsman, the kind with good bones and secret spaces, perfect for hiding things or people. Sarah Morris met me at the front door, mid-30s, hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, dark circles under intelligent eyes. A high school English teacher, she'd moved here 3 years ago after her divorce. She led me through rooms filled with books and plants, the kind of home that felt lived in but tidy. It started about 6 months ago, she explained, her voice carefully measured as we settled in her living room. The subtle scent of cinnamon hung in the air from a half-burned candle on the coffee table. Just little things at first. A box of crackers I was sure I hadn't finished. A coffee mug in the sink I didn't remember using. She paused, tracing a finger along the arm of her sofa. I noticed her nails were bitten to the quick. I thought maybe I was just forgetful, working too hard, not getting enough sleep. But then I started noticing other things. The sound of rain intensified outside, a soft drumming against the roof. I took notes in my small leather-bound notebook, the scratch of my pen against paper oddly loud in the quiet room. Like what? I prompted gently. Picture frames moved slightly, not dramatically, just rotated a few degrees, books reshuffled, and then she took a deep breath. I started feeling like someone was watching me, especially at night. Many of my cases begin this way, that creeping sensation of being observed. Usually it's nothing, the mind playing tricks, shadows behaving strangely in old houses. But occasionally, rarely, it's something more. Last week I found a hairpin in my bathroom that wasn't mine, and once I woke up in the middle of the night and thought I heard breathing, not just normal house sounds, but rhythmic, human. I nodded, keeping my expression neutral. And what happened last night? Sarah led me upstairs to her bedroom. A simple space, queen bed with a navy comforter, nightstand with a stack of novels, a dresser, and a closet with sliding doors. She pulled one door open, revealing neatly hung clothes. I was looking for a sweater I hadn't worn since last winter, she said, her voice dropping lower. I reached to the back and felt something give way. She pushed aside the hanging clothes and pointed to the back panel of the closet. It was slightly ajar, revealing darkness behind it. "May I asked, and she nodded. I clicked on my flashlight and carefully removed the panel entirely. Behind it was a narrow opening, just wide enough for a person to slip through. The beam of my light revealed a crude passage, carefully hollowed out between the walls. "This house," Sarah whispered, "it has these strange spaces. The realtor mentioned something about Prohibition-era hiding spots, but I never imagined." I squeezed into the opening, dust and insulation fibers dancing in the beam of my flashlight. The passage continued, sloping downward toward what I assumed was the ground floor. As I made my way through, I noticed small marks on the inner walls, finger smudges, scrapes, evidence of frequent use. The passage opened into a larger space, hidden between Sarah's kitchen and the exterior wall of the house. A crawl space that had been converted into something else entirely, a living space. My flashlight revealed a thin mattress on the floor, a small battery-powered lamp, a plastic container filled with non-perishable foods, protein bars, crackers, dried fruit, a gallon jug of water nearly empty, and most disturbing of all, a stack of composition notebooks and a digital camera. I picked up the camera with a gloved hand and turned it on. The most recent photo made my skin prickle with goosebumps. Sarah, asleep in her bed, the photo taken from mere inches away from her face. The digital timestamp showed 3:17 a.m. just 2 nights ago. With growing unease, I opened one of the composition books. Inside were meticulous notes, written in cramped, precise handwriting. October 12, S made pasta for dinner again, left half uneaten in fridge. Will retrieve at 2 a.m. when deep sleep cycle begins. October 15, S spent 47 minutes on phone with mother, laughed 12 times. Voice sounds different when she thinks no one is listening. October 18, S read in bed until 11:22 p.m. Book The Dutch House, page 167, fell asleep with light on. Entered room at 1:03 a.m. to turn off lamp. Stood watching for 7 minutes. Her breathing pattern indicates REM sleep. Page after page documented Sarah's movements, habits, preferences. The writer had been studying her for months, living within feet of her, separated only by drywall and insulation. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the October air seeping through the old house's walls. I carefully made my way back through the passage and found Sarah sitting on the edge of her bed, arms wrapped around herself. "There's someone," I said gently, "or there was. We need to secure the house and bring in a team." Within an hour, the quiet home on Maple Street was filled with officers. Crime scene technicians dusted for prints and collected evidence from the hidden space. Officers searched the entire house, checking for other secret passages or hiding places. "The fingerprints will tell us who," I told Sarah as she sat at her kitchen table, hands wrapped around a mug of tea that had long gone cold. "But I have a theory about the how." I showed her what one of the officers had discovered, a barely noticeable gap between the foundation and the decorative lattice that surrounded the base of the house, just wide enough for a slender person to slip through and access the crawl space. "They've likely been entering at night, maybe watching the house, learning your schedule." Sarah's face was pale. "How long do you think?" "Based on the journals, at least 4 months. The technicians found multiple fingerprints in the hidden space that didn't match Sarah's. When we ran them through the database, we got a hit almost immediately. Daniel Mercer, 32 years old, previously arrested for stalking and breaking and entering 3 years earlier in another state, released after serving 18 months. What the database didn't tell us, but what we would soon discover, was that Daniel Mercer had been Sarah's student at her previous school in Ohio. A troubled 17-year-old when she taught him, now a man who had tracked her across state lines and made himself at home in the spaces between her walls. We found him 2 days later, sleeping in his car 3 blocks from Sarah's house. He had been watching, waiting for the police presence to diminish so he could return to his hidden sanctuary. When we arrested him, he was calm, almost relieved. In his possession was another composition book, filled with more observations about Sarah, her habits, her conversations, her sleeping patterns. She never knew I was there, he told me during the interrogation, his voice soft and reasonable, as if explaining something obvious. I just wanted to be close to her, to protect her. Sarah Morris sold her house 2 weeks later. She couldn't bear to stay there knowing what had happened, imagining the eyes that had watched her through unseen gaps in the walls. Sometimes I drive past that old Craftsman, now vacant, a for sale sign swaying gently in the front yard. I wonder who will buy it next and if they'll ever discover all its secrets. At night, when the house creaks and settles around me, I sometimes find myself wondering if I'm truly alone. I check my closets before bed now, run my hands along the back panels, just to be sure. Because the most frightening truth isn't that monsters exist, it's that they can live so close to us, breathing the same air, separated by mere inches, without us ever knowing they're there. The case file on Daniel Mercer sits in my cabinet now, closed but not forgotten. Sometimes, on quiet evenings when the office is empty, I flip through those composition books again, reading his meticulous observations of a woman who never knew she was being watched, and I remember what he whispered to me as the officers led him away. "We all have walls," he said, "and something living inside them." Story 7. I remember the first time I saw it, that police sketch with its familiar lines and shadows. The resemblance wasn't just uncanny, it was perfect. Every curve of the cheekbone, the slight asymmetry of the eyes, the way the hair fell across the forehead. It was me, yet there my name was listed among the missing persons of Oak Ridge County. Alina Winters, the caption read. Last seen entering a black SUV outside Meridian Shopping Center, Tuesday, 8:47 p.m. I stood in the police station lobby, my coffee growing cold in my hands, staring at the bulletin board. A chill crawled up my spine, settling between my shoulder blades like an unwelcome hand. The fluorescent lights buzzed quietly overhead, casting everything in a sickly, greenish glow. Officer Daniels had called me in about an unrelated matter, a minor fender bender I'd witnessed the day before, but now that seemed inconsequential. "Ms. Winters," the officer's voice came from behind me, but I couldn't tear my eyes from the sketch. "Are you all right? You look like you've seen a ghost." In a way, I had my own ghost. That's me," I whispered, pointing to the sketch. My finger trembled slightly, leaving a small smudge on the protective glass covering the bulletin board. Officer Daniels followed my gaze, his brow furrowing. The gentle click of his pen against his notepad stopped abruptly. "I don't understand. You're clearly standing right here." "Exactly," I said, my voice barely audible over the soft hum of the station's air conditioning. "So why is my face on your missing persons board?" He studied the image, then me, then back again. The resemblance was undeniable. There must be some mistake. Let me check the file. As he walked away, his boots making soft squeaking sounds against the linoleum floor, I took a closer look at the information beneath my sketched face. The report claimed I had been missing for 3 days. 3 days during which I had been teaching my literature classes, grading papers in my apartment, and walking my dog through Patterson Park each evening. I hadn't been missing. I had been living my life in plain sight. Officer Daniels returned carrying a manila folder, the edges slightly worn from handling. He guided me to a small interview room, not an interrogation room, he assured me, though the distinction seemed meaningless given the circumstances. The chair beneath me was cold metal, uncomfortable by design. The walls were a faded blue-gray, like an overcast sky. "The report was filed by your neighbor, Martha Reeves," he said, spreading photographs across the table. "She claims she saw you entering a black SUV 3 nights ago and hasn't seen you since. She became concerned when you didn't pick up your mail or take out your trash." I stared at the photographs, images of my apartment building, my mailbox overflowing with envelopes, and a black SUV parked across the street, its windows tinted beyond legal limits, its license plate conveniently obscured by mud or dirt. "That's impossible," I said, hearing the tremor in my voice. "I've been home every night this week. I spoke with Martha yesterday morning when I was leaving for work." Officer Daniels leaned back in his chair, which creaked softly under his weight. His eyes, pale blue and disconcertingly perceptive, studied me with professional detachment. "Ms. Winters, have you experienced any gaps in your memory recently? Any periods of time you can't account for?" The question hung in the air between us, heavy and unsettling. Had I? The past few days had blurred together, as days often do for a university professor during midterm season. But I remembered teaching my classes, remembered the students' faces, remembered making dinner each night and falling asleep to the sound of rain against my bedroom window. "Didn't I?" "No," I said firmly, though something cold and uncertain was spreading through my chest. "My memory is fine." He nodded, neither believing nor disbelieving. He simply noted my response in his small, leather-bound notebook. The scratch of his pen against paper was oddly loud in the quiet room. "Would you mind if we called Martha, just to clear things up?" I nodded, watching as he dialed the number. The conversation was brief, one-sided from my perspective. Officer Daniels' expression gave nothing away, but when he hung up, he looked troubled. "She insists she hasn't seen you in 3 days until right now. Says she's been quite worried." I felt a headache beginning to form behind my eyes. "That's ridiculous. I saw her yesterday. We talked about her new rose bushes." "She says she planted those rose bushes 2 weeks ago, and you complimented them then." The room seemed to tilt slightly, as though the floor beneath me had become unstable. I pressed my palms against the cool surface of the table to steady myself. "Take me home," I said quietly. "I need to go home." Officer Daniels agreed to drive me, following protocol for someone potentially disoriented. The police cruiser smelled of artificial pine and old coffee. Through the window, I watched as familiar streets passed by, yet somehow they looked different, the colors slightly off, the shadows deeper than I remembered. As we pulled into my driveway, I noticed them immediately. Tire marks, wide, dark tracks pressed into the soft earth beside my driveway, exactly where a vehicle might park if someone didn't want to be noticed from the street. My heart skipped painfully in my chest. "Those weren't there before," I whispered. Officer Daniels followed my gaze. "When is before, Ms. Winters?" I didn't answer. Instead, I looked down at my hands, noticing for the first time the dirt crusted beneath my fingernails. Dark, rich soil, the kind you might find in a forest, not in my meticulously maintained urban garden. I hadn't been gardening. I hadn't been anywhere near soil. At least, I didn't think I had. Inside my apartment, everything looked normal at first glance. Books on shelves, dishes in the sink, the faint scent of the lavender candle I'd burned the night before. But as Officer Daniels waited in the living room, I moved through the space, touching surfaces, opening drawers. Something felt off, items slightly rearranged, as though someone had carefully put everything back, but not quite in the right place. In my bedroom, I found it, a muddy shoe print barely visible on the carpet near my closet. not my size, not my pattern. In the bathroom, a longer blonde hair than mine caught in the shower drain. And on my laptop, when I opened it, the browser history showed searches I had never made. How to identify if you're being followed, memory loss causes, doppelgangers in folklore, what happens to missing persons who return. The last search had been made while I was supposedly missing. I returned to the living room where Officer Daniels was examining a photograph on my bookshelf, me at my college graduation, smiling into the camera, unaware of the strange future awaiting me. "Officer," I said, my voice steadier than I expected, "I think someone has been pretending to be me." He turned slowly. "Why do you think that?" "Because I found evidence that someone else has been in my home, and because I'm starting to think that maybe we're both right. Martha hasn't seen me in 3 days, and yet I've been living my life, just not here." The realization was like cold water down my spine. Somewhere, someone with my face had been living another version of my life. And somehow, I had been living a life I couldn't fully remember. The next several days passed in a blur of police interviews, psychological evaluations, and DNA tests. The results were inconclusive, frustratingly so. My DNA matched my medical records. No evidence of a break-in could be found in my apartment. My students confirmed I had taught my classes, though some mentioned I had seemed distracted or not quite myself. The tire marks in my driveway contained traces of soil from the northern part of the county, near the old reservoir, a place I had no reason to visit. The dirt under my fingernails matched that soil exactly. Security cameras at the university showed me entering and exiting the building at the expected times. Except in the footage, I carried my bag in my right hand. I am left-handed. At night, I dream of forests and dark water. I dream of headlights reflecting in a rearview mirror and the sound of a car door closing. I dream of another woman with my face, sitting across from me at a table I don't recognize, telling me things I can't remember when I wake. The police have closed the missing persons case. After all, I am no longer missing. I have returned to my life, teaching, grading, walking my dog through the park. But sometimes when I pass a reflective surface, a window, a mirror, a still pond, I pause, expecting to see someone else looking back at me. Someone with my face but not my eyes. And in those moments I wonder, if she was me for those 3 days, then who was I? The case file remains open on my coffee table. The police sketch my face stares up at me each evening. And each morning I check my driveway for tire marks and my fingernails for dirt, never certain which version of myself went to sleep the night before or which one will wake up. The neighbors say they're glad I'm safe, that I've been found, but I'm not sure I was ever truly missing. I think I was replaced. Story 8. The first thing I noticed when I moved into apartment 3B was how the afternoon light filtered through the dusty vertical blinds, casting long, thin shadows across the hardwood floor. It was the kind of unremarkable building you'd pass 100 times without a second glance, red brick, 3 stories, nestled between a laundromat and a bodega on a quiet side street in Greenpoint. The real estate agent had emphasized how rare it was to find a pre-war building with only 3 units, all identical in layout. Efficient use of space, she'd said, tapping her pen against the floor plan. 1 bedroom, 1 bath, open concept kitchen. You won't find anything this spacious in this neighborhood for this price. I remember running my fingers along the cool, smooth surface of the hallway wall on that first evening. 3 weeks of unpacking boxes had left me with an intimate knowledge of every square inch of my new home. The walls were solid, substantial things, not the paper-thin partitions of modern construction. This building had history embedded in its bones. Pipes groaned and whispered secret conversations through the walls at night. The radiator in the living room clanked to life with a rhythm all its own. It was late October when I found it. The air outside had turned crisp, and I'd been hanging a full-length mirror in the bedroom, the kind that shows you everything from head to toe. The frame was heavy, ornate brass I'd found at an estate sale. I remember the weight of it in my hands as I positioned it against the wall, stepping back to ensure it was level. Something felt off about the placement. The wall seemed to absorb the sound differently when I tapped it, a hollow echo rather than the solid thud I expected. Curiosity got the better of me. I ran my fingers along the edges of the wallpaper, feeling for inconsistencies. Near the baseboard, the pattern didn't quite match up. A slight discoloration, almost imperceptible unless you were looking for it. When I pressed firmly, I felt the wall give way ever so slightly, as if exhaling a long-held breath. The mirrored panel swung inward on silent hinges, revealing darkness beyond. The air that escaped was cool and carried a faint chemical smell, something antiseptic, like hospitals and cleaning supplies. I stood frozen in the doorway, my hand still pressed against the edge of the panel, as my eyes adjusted to the dimness within. A bathroom, a complete bathroom that wasn't on any floor plan, hidden behind a false wall. The space was small but functional: toilet, sink, shower stall. Everything pristine white tile and chrome fixtures, like something from the 1950s, preserved in amber. The overhead light flickered to life when I found the switch, illuminating the space in a harsh fluorescent glow that made my skin look sallow and unnatural. But it was what lined the walls that made my breath catch in my throat. Shelves. Shelves filled with personal hygiene items meticulously arranged, toothbrushes still in their packaging, bottles of cologne and perfume, hairbrushes with strands still caught in the bristles, prescription medication bottles with names I didn't recognize. None of them were mine. None of them could have been mine. I remember the weight of my phone in my hand as I took pictures, documenting everything with the clinical detachment of someone trying to maintain their sanity. The timestamps on those photos would later become crucial evidence. 7:43 p.m., October 24th, the moment when my understanding of my new home fundamentally changed. Against my better judgment, I turned the faucet handle. The pipes shuddered and groaned, protesting after what must have been years of disuse. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a thin stream of water sputtered forth, rust-colored at first, then deepening to a dark crimson that pooled in the white porcelain basin. I recoiled, shutting off the tap immediately, but not before the metallic scent reached my nostrils. Detective Rivera would later explain that old pipes often produce reddish water when first used after a long period of dormancy. Iron oxide, she said, rust, not blood, as my panicked mind had immediately assumed. But the laboratory results would tell a different story. Traces of hemoglobin, degraded but present, human blood in the water supply dating back years. The building superintendent claimed ignorance when questioned. 3 units, he insisted, always had been. The original blueprints from 1928 confirmed his story: 3 identical apartments, each with 1 bathroom. No hidden spaces, no secret rooms. But the revised plans from 1967, unearthed from deep within city archives, told a different tale. A renovation that added a 4th unit, mysteriously absent from all subsequent records. The history of 317 Maple Street slowly unraveled like a loose thread pulled from an old sweater. Previous tenants of apartment 3B were tracked down, interviewed. None had discovered the hidden bathroom, or so they claimed. Property records revealed a pattern of short-term occupancy. no one staying longer than 18 months, always leaving abruptly, often breaking leases. The building had changed hands 7 times in 40 years, each new owner seemingly eager to sell after brief ownership. It was while interviewing the daughter of the owner from the late 1960s that the name Anthony Lemark first emerged. A quiet man, she recalled, a doctor who purchased the building as an investment, unmarried, no children, kept to himself, had an office in the basement where he sometimes saw patients after hours. Special cases, he called them, people who needed discretion. The search of county medical records revealed that Dr. Lemark had his license suspended in 1965 for performing unauthorized procedures. 2 years later, he purchased 317 Maple Street. 2 years after that, complaints about water quality began filtering in from neighboring buildings. Discoloration, unusual odors, problems that municipal workers could never quite pinpoint. When the forensic team finally cut into the walls surrounding the hidden bathroom, they found the space between units had been modified. The plumbing didn't connect to the city lines in the expected way. Instead, it fed into a separate system that ran through the basement, a basement that, according to the superintendent, had been sealed off decades ago due to structural concerns. I wasn't there when they broke through the concrete floor beneath the building. My therapist had suggested I distance myself from the investigation, find temporary housing elsewhere. But I've read the reports, seen the photographs. Beneath that sealed basement lay another level entirely, a space that didn't exist on any blueprint, a space with examination tables and surgical equipment dating back to the late 1960s. A space where Anthony Lemark had continued his practice away from the prying eyes of medical boards and ethics committees. They found 27 sets of remains. Most were fragmentary, some little more than trace DNA embedded in the grout between tiles, each representing someone who had sought Dr. Lemark's help, perhaps desperate for procedures they couldn't obtain legally. The hidden bathroom in 3B wasn't the only one. Each apartment had its mirrored counterpart, its secret space where evidence could be collected, where water samples could be taken, where the doctor could monitor the deterioration of his improvised disposal system over time. I've since moved away from Greenpoint, away from New York entirely. The nightmares have mostly subsided, though sometimes I still wake up thinking I hear water running through pipes when the house is silent. I check behind every mirror in any new place I stay. The investigation continues, but Anthony Lemark himself will never face justice. He died in 1984, taking his secrets with him, or so he thought. Sometimes I wonder about the personal items on those shelves, the toothbrushes never used, the prescription bottles with names that are now being cross-referenced with missing persons reports spanning 5 decades, the hairbrushes with genetic material that's slowly being identified through genealogical databases. And sometimes, in the moments before sleep claims me, I think about how many other buildings might hold similar secrets behind their walls. How many other ordinary apartments might conceal extraordinary horrors. How the spaces we inhabit carry histories we never suspect, until that moment when a wall gives way, revealing what was always there, hidden in plain sight. Story 9, she was planting tomatoes when the shovel hit something hard, a canvas strap. She unearthed a backpack filled with a child's clothing, Polaroids of an unknown family, and a note, "Please don't tell them I'm here." She had no memory of ever digging there. I remember the call coming in on a Tuesday afternoon, the kind of spring day where the air feels expectant, caught between seasons. The sky was that particular shade of blue that makes you think everything is right with the world. I should have known better. My name is Detective Morgan Reeves, and after 15 years with the department, I've learned that the most disturbing cases often begin on beautiful days. This one started with a woman's trembling voice on my office phone, the words tumbling out between shallow breaths. "I found something in my garden," she said, "a backpack with children's clothes and pictures. I don't understand how it got there." I drove to the address. She provided, a modest two-story home with cream-colored siding on Maple Street, the kind of neighborhood where people plant perennials along white picket fences and know each other's coffee preferences. Ellen Sawyer met me at the door, her hands still bearing traces of garden soil beneath her fingernails. She'd been waiting for me on her porch swing, a mug of untouched tea gone cold beside her. "I've lived here for 8 years," she told me as she led me through her home to the backyard. "I've gardened every spring. I've never seen anything like this." The hole was still there in her vegetable patch, a dark wound in the earth about 2 feet deep. Beside it lay a navy blue backpack, the canvas material stained with soil and what time does to fabric buried underground. Ellen hadn't touched it beyond her initial discovery, she assured me. Something about it had frightened her too much. I knelt beside the backpack, the knees of my slacks pressing into soft dirt. The zipper moved with surprising ease, almost as if someone had recently oiled it. Inside, folded with careful precision, I found a child's clothing, a red t-shirt with a cartoon spaceship, size 6, a pair of jeans with patched knees, 3 pairs of small white socks, and underwear with the days of the week printed on them. Between the layers of clothing were 5 Polaroid photographs. In the first, a woman with auburn hair smiled at the camera, her arm around a boy of about 5 with the same reddish hair and a spray of freckles across his nose. The second showed the same boy on a blue bicycle. The third was the boy alone, looking straight at the camera with an expression that seemed oddly adult, watchful, wary. The fourth showed a man I presumed to be the father, tall with dark hair, standing next to a lake with sunglasses hiding his eyes. The fifth photo was different. It showed only a door red with a brass knocker shaped like a lion's head. And then there was the note, written in pencil on lined paper torn from a spiral notebook. The handwriting was childish, uncertain. "Please don't tell them I'm here." No signature, no explanation. "I don't understand," Ellen said, watching me from a few feet away, arms crossed tightly over her chest. "How long has that been there, and who put it there?" "That's what we need to figure out," I told her, carefully returning the items to the backpack and sealing it in an evidence bag. "Do you mind if I ask you some questions inside?" Her kitchen was bright and airy, plants crowding the windowsill above the sink. She made fresh tea with hands that trembled slightly less now that someone else was taking ownership of her discovery. "Did you purchase this house from someone, or was it new construction?" I asked, notebook open on the table between us. "I bought it from a couple named Mercer. They were moving to Arizona for retirement. They'd lived here for nearly 20 years before me." "And in the 8 years you've been here, you've gardened in that same spot?" "Yes, though not very deeply. This is the first year I've decided to put in tomatoes. They need deeper soil." She stared into her mug. "If I just stuck with lettuce and herbs like before." I wrote down the previous owners' names. "And you've never noticed anything unusual about that part of the yard? No disturbed soil, unusual growth patterns, anything like that?" She shook her head. "Nothing. It's just been normal garden space. I don't understand how someone could have buried something there without tearing up the lawn, and I definitely would have noticed that." I asked her about neighbors, about any children who might have frequented the neighborhood years ago, about any rumors of missing persons in the area before she moved in. Her answers provided nothing substantial. As I prepared to leave with the evidence, she caught my arm. "Detective, that note, who do you think they are?" I wish I could have given her a reassuring answer. Instead, I told her the truth. "I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out." Back at the station, I spread the contents of the backpack on an examination table. Our forensics technician, Sonia, photographed each item before carefully examining them for fingerprints, DNA, or any trace evidence that might help identify who they belonged to and how long they'd been buried. Based on the degradation of the material and the condition of the photos, I'd say this has been underground for at least 3 to 4 years, she told me, peering at the backpack's strap under magnification. But not much longer than that. The decomposition isn't extensive enough. So sometime in the last 4 years, someone buried a child's backpack in Ellen Sawyer's garden without her knowledge, I said, more to myself than to Sonia. "Seems that way, and look at this." She pointed to a small tag inside the backpack. "There's a name written here, though it's faded. Looks like C. Turner or C. Warner, I can't be certain." I stared at the photographs again. The boy's face gazed back at me, his eyes holding something I couldn't quite identify. Fear, resignation, a child's normal wariness of cameras, I couldn't be sure. The database search for missing children with the potential name Sonia had identified turned up 3 possibilities across the state. One was a girl, so we eliminated her. Of the 2 boys, one had been found deceased 2 years earlier, his remains discovered in a wooded area 50 miles north. The third was Christopher Turner, reported missing 5 years ago by his school when he failed to attend classes for a week, and his mother didn't respond to calls. When we pulled up Christopher's school photo, there was no doubt. The same reddish hair, the same scattering of freckles, the child from the Polaroids. Christopher had lived with his mother, Elaine Turner, in an apartment about 15 miles from Ellen Sawyer's home. According to the case file, when officers went to perform a welfare check, they found the apartment empty. No furniture, no personal belongings, as if Elaine and Christopher had simply vanished. The investigating officers had reached out to family members who claimed they hadn't heard from Elaine in months. Her ex-husband, Christopher's father, had been living in Colorado at the time and provided a solid alibi for his whereabouts. The case had gone cold. No credit card activity, no cell phone pings, no school enrollments for Christopher elsewhere. It was as if they had disappeared into thin air. And now, 5 years later, Christopher's backpack had surfaced in a stranger's garden. I drove back to Ellen Sawyer's neighborhood the next day. This time I went door to door, showing the Polaroid photos to neighbors who had lived there long enough to potentially remember something. Most shook their heads, expressing shock and concern, but offering nothing useful. Until I reached the house directly behind Ellen's. Martha Devers was in her 70s, with white hair and eyes that missed nothing. She invited me in, served me coffee in a delicate cup that had probably been her mother's, and studied the photos with a magnifying glass she kept in her knitting basket. "I've seen this woman before," she said, tapping the photo of Elaine Turner. "She used to visit the people who lived in the house behind mine before Ms. Sawyer moved in." "The Mercers?" I asked. "Yes, she would come by occasionally, always in the evening. I thought perhaps she was a relative, though Mr. Mercer never mentioned having family nearby." "Did you ever see the boy with her?" Martha frowned, concentrating. Once or twice, I believe, quiet little thing stayed close to his mother. And the man in this photo, I showed her the picture of the dark-haired man by the lake. She adjusted her glasses. No, I don't believe I've seen him. But the woman, she stopped coming around maybe a year before the Mercers moved away. I remember thinking it was odd since she'd been visiting regularly for some time. I thanked Martha and left with a new direction to pursue. The Mercers had moved to Arizona years ago, but their forwarding information was still in the property records. A phone call later, I was speaking with Gerald Mercer, now 82 years old. Elaine Turner, he repeated after I explained why I was calling. Yes, I knew Elaine. She was my niece, my sister's daughter. Troubled girl always had been, even before Christopher came along. Did she visit you often when you lived next to Ellen Sawyer's house? For a while, yes. She was having problems with Christopher's father. He wasn't in the picture much, but when he was, there was always drama. I told her she and the boy could stay with us if they needed to, but she was proud, said she could handle her own problems. When was the last time you saw her? A long pause followed. Must have been about 6 years ago now. She called one night, sounded frightened, said she and Christopher needed to disappear for a while, that he'd found them again. I assumed she meant her ex. She asked if she could leave something with us for safekeeping. Said she'd come back for it when it was safe. And did she leave something with you? No, Gerald said. She never showed up that night. We tried calling her for days, but her phone was disconnected. We filed a missing persons report, but the police said there wasn't much they could do if she'd left voluntarily. My wife and I moved to Arizona about a year later. My arthritis couldn't take another northern winter. Mr. Mercer, did you ever bury anything in your backyard, specifically in what would now be Ellen Sawyer's vegetable garden? Another pause. No, detective. We weren't the burying type. Had a dog once that we cremated, but that's about it. I thanked him and hung up, staring at the file on my desk. Something wasn't adding up. If Elaine and Christopher had disappeared 5 years ago, and the backpack had been buried within the last 4 years, who had put it there, and why? The answer came 3 days later in the form of DNA results from the clothes in the backpack. As expected, they contained Christopher's DNA. But there was another contributor, an adult male whose profile wasn't in our system. On a hunch, I requested the case files from Elaine and Christopher's disappearance be sent to me, including any evidence that might have been collected. Among the items was a coffee mug taken from their apartment, which had yielded a partial fingerprint that hadn't matched anything at the time. Our lab compared that print to latent prints found on the red door Polaroid from the backpack. It was a match. Meanwhile, I'd been researching properties in the area with red doors featuring lionhead knockers. There were 3 within a 20-mile radius. 2 belonged to families with no apparent connection to our case. The third was a rental property currently occupied by a middle-aged couple, but 5 years ago, it had been rented to a man named James Warner. James Warner, who had once been married to Elaine Turner's sister, Christopher's uncle by marriage, though the relationship had ended years before Christopher was born. Warner had no criminal record, but when we ran his name through national databases, something interesting came up. He had been questioned in connection with a child luring case in another state 7 years earlier, though charges were never filed due to insufficient evidence. The pieces were starting to form a disturbing picture. I obtained a warrant for Warner's current address and apartment in a neighboring city and his DNA. When we tested it against the unknown male DNA from the backpack, it was a match. James Warner sat across from me in our interview room, his face betraying nothing as I laid out the evidence. He was in his 40s, unremarkable in appearance, with the kind of face that wouldn't stand out in a crowd, the kind of face people trust without knowing why. "I was just trying to help them," he said eventually, his voice soft. "Elaine was scared of Christopher's father, said he'd threaten them. She reached out to me because she knew I cared about them." "And did you care about them, Mr. Warner, or just about Christopher?" His eyes flicked up to meet mine, then away. "I loved them both. Elaine was family once." "Where are they now?" "I don't know." His fingers tapped a rhythm on the table. "Elaine left Christopher with me for a few days. Said she needed to arrange some things, find a safe place. She never came back." "And what did you do with Christopher after she didn't return?" Warner was silent for a long moment. "I took care of him. He was happy with me. We were going to be a family." "Until when?" His face changed then, something dark passing over his features, until he started asking questions, wanting his mother, saying he was going to tell people about our secret house. "The red door, the lion knocker." "What happened to Christopher, James?" He looked down at his hands. "It was an accident. He fell down the stairs. I tried to help him, but he wasn't breathing. I panicked." "And Elaine?" "I told you she never came back. Maybe she found someone else. Maybe something happened to her. I don't know." I didn't believe him about any of it. The evidence told a different story of a man obsessed with a child who had likely lured Elaine under the pretense of helping her escape an allegedly abusive situation, only to harm her and keep her son. And when Christopher became too difficult to control. "Why bury the backpack in the Mercer's yard?" I asked. "It was where Elaine was heading that night. She told me she was going to her uncle's for help. I thought it was fitting, like returning Christopher to where he would have been safe, if only. If only Warner hadn't interfered. If only Elaine had made it to her uncle's house that night. If only Christopher hadn't fallen down the stairs." We found Christopher's remains 2 weeks later, buried behind the house with the red door and lion knocker, which Warner had sold 3 years earlier. Elaine's body was discovered in the crawl space of the same house, hidden behind a hastily constructed false wall. The evidence was overwhelming. Warner eventually confessed to both murders, though he continued to claim Christopher's death was accidental. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Ellen Sawyer still lives in her house on Maple Street. She still gardens, though she moved her vegetable patch to the other side of the yard. The space where the backpack was found is now a small memorial garden with forget-me-nots blooming each spring. Sometimes I drive by and see her tending those flowers carefully, reverently, as if by keeping that small patch of earth beautiful, she's somehow watching over a little boy she never knew. A boy who wrote a desperate plea for help and hid it in his backpack, hoping someone would find it before it was too late. I think about that backpack often, how it remained hidden for years, its secrets preserved in darkness until a woman's shovel struck canvas on a beautiful spring day. How truth has a way of surfacing, no matter how deeply it's buried. And I wonder what other secrets lie just beneath the surface of ordinary lives, waiting for someone to dig just a little deeper. Story 10. The ancient box lay hidden beneath layers of dust and forgotten belongings in the attic, a relic left behind by the previous inhabitants of the house. Within its weathered confines were faded Polaroids, snapshots of bygone birthdays and family gatherings, harmless memories, or so it seemed, until she reached the final photograph. In that last image, captured in her very own living room, she saw a family that was not her own. The familiar couch, the familiar curtains, but strangers smiling back at the camera. And there, lurking in the shadows of the hallway, a figure stood watching a man whose presence sent a shiver down her spine. Rebecca's hands trembled as she held the photo, the Polaroid edges vibrating slightly. The family in the picture, a woman with honey blonde hair, a man with thick glasses, and two children, froze in a moment of joy, oblivious to the danger that loomed behind them. Descending the creaking wooden steps, Rebecca felt the weight of the house pressing down on her, its emptiness suffocating. Placing the eerie photograph on the kitchen counter, she scrutinized it under the harsh glare of the fluorescent light. The resemblance was uncanny, the archway, the molding, the bay window. This was undeniably her house, yet these faces were strangers to her. The arrival of Detective Morgan brought a sense of urgency to the unsettling discovery. With his weathered leather jacket and piercing gaze, he examined the photograph with a meticulous eye, seeking answers in the faded Polaroid. As the investigation unfolded, layers of history were peeled back. The house had changed hands through a series of families, each one vanishing without a trace after precisely 1 year of residency. The mystery deepened as the past unraveled before them. A breakthrough came with the identification of the family in the photograph, the Sutherlands, who had disappeared without a trace 15 years prior. The forensic analysis revealed chilling details, pointing to a sinister presence in the shadows, a figure that seemed to belong there, watching with intent. The trail led back to the architect of the house, Samuel Whitfield, who had met a tragic end years ago. Yet his spectral presence seemed to linger within the walls of the house, orchestrating the enigmatic disappearances that spanned decades. Beneath the concrete floor of the basement, the truth lay buried literally. The missing families, perfectly preserved in the cool earth, their lives frozen in time by the lens of a camera that captured their unsuspecting smiles. The uncovering of a hidden crawlspace in the attic revealed a chilling truth, a journal detailing the meticulous observations of the families, a plan unfolding with eerie precision. The final entry hinted at a new target, a sense of urgency palpable in the cryptic words. Rebecca, now under police protection, found herself haunted by mysterious calls in the dead of night, the mechanical whir of a Polaroid camera echoing through the receiver. The house, now a crime scene, held its secrets close, its darkened windows shielding the truth from prying eyes. As the investigation continued, the specter of Samuel Whitfield loomed large, his presence felt but his whereabouts unknown. Some believed he perished long ago, while others whispered of his ghostly presence in a new guise, a new house, a new family to watch. And so, as the shadows lengthen and the night deepens, the legacy of the man in the photograph endures, casting a veil of mystery over those who dare to seek the truth. In the darkness, new photographs develop, capturing unsuspecting faces, while the watchers in the shadows remain unseen, their presence felt only by those who are being watched. Story 11: The Unearthed Letter. Renovations always have a way of unraveling mysteries long forgotten. Amongst the debris of old newspapers and broken trinkets, there lies a hidden world waiting to be uncovered. Sarah and Michael, drawn to the charm of a Victorian-era home, never anticipated the dark secrets lurking beneath its elegant facade. As they tore up the floorboards, a sense of unease crept over them. Nestled beneath the weathered wood, a letter lay in wait, its edges yellowed with age and its message cryptic: "Don't trust the one who knocked." Before they could make sense of its ominous warning, 3 sharp raps pierced the silence of the empty house, sending shivers down their spines. Detective Alina Reed, with her partner by her side, delved into the chilling discovery. The note, fragile and worn, spoke of a past filled with fear and deception. Reed's experienced hands carefully retrieved the evidence, knowing that the couple's inadvertent touch had already tainted it. Background checks on Sarah and Michael revealed nothing amiss, yet the house itself held a tangled history. Previously owned by the Hargrove family, the home bore witness to secrets buried deep within its walls. The death of the last resident, Margaret Hargrove, raised questions that begged for answers. Forensic analysis hinted at a tale of betrayal and tragedy. The note, dated 2 decades prior, hinted at a time of turmoil for the Hargroves. Franklin, a once respected teacher turned recluse, harbored dark secrets that even his closest confidants had failed to uncover. Interviews with Margaret's sister unveiled a harrowing truth: Franklin's dealings with a sinister figure known only as the Collector. Franklin's debts, accrued through gambling, had led to a fateful confrontation that ended in violence and deceit. As Reed and her team unearthed the grim reality buried beneath the house, the pieces of the puzzle fell into place. The remains of Victor Mercer, the elusive lone shark, were discovered in a makeshift grave beneath the foundation, his fate sealed by Franklin's desperate actions. Margaret, haunted by the echoes of the past, had lived in fear of retribution, her sanity slowly slipping away as the knocking persisted, a relentless reminder of the horrors she had helped conceal. The house, now tainted by the shadows of its past, stood empty and forsaken. Sarah and Michael, unable to bear the weight of its dark legacy, parted ways with the property, leaving behind a legacy of unanswered questions and lingering whispers of the unknown. In the stillness of the night, whispers of 3 distinct knocks echo through the vacant halls, a haunting reminder of the secrets that lie buried within the walls. Detective Reed, in her final report, pondered the enigmatic nature of the human heart, where truths and lies intertwine, leaving behind a legacy of untold mysteries. And so, the tale of the unearthed letter remains a chilling testament to the darkness that lurks within us all. Story 12: Beneath the Layers. She desired to refresh the nursery before the newborn's arrival. The walls bore a faded blue tint, a hue that held untold tales within its aged layers. As the first coat of white paint glided on, a hidden secret emerged from beneath letters, faint at first, then gradually sharpening into clarity. A message etched beneath the surface. "Don't let it hear you." A gasp escaped her lips. Stepping back, her eyes caught sight of it, tiny handprints imprinted in the fresh paint, too high for any child to reach. This revelation within the nursery of the Morgan house marked the genesis of what would later be dubbed the Whispering House case. The young couple had acquired the Victorian-style residence a few months prior, lured by an unbelievably low price. The real estate agent had merely mentioned minor cosmetic issues, omitting any reference to the property's dark past. Detective Sarah Klein, notebook in hand, rang the doorbell. A pregnant woman answered, her belly protruding beneath paint-stained overalls. Shadows rimmed her eyes' rest had eluded her for days. The detective observed the tremble in the woman's hands as she recounted the discovery of the message and handprints. The previous owners vanished abruptly, the woman disclosed. Neighbors claimed they departed in the dead of night. No moving truck, just essential items packed into their car. Inside the historic abode, Detective Klein's steps echoed against weathered floorboards. Standing in the nursery, she scrutinized the partially painted wall. The message lingered where the paint job had been abandoned. Beside it, 5 small handprints pressed into the wet paint, positioned at adult shoulder height. Back at the precinct, the detective delved into property records. The house had changed hands 8 times in 30 years, a remarkably high turnover rate. Each family stayed for less than 2 years. More chilling were the child welfare reports tied to 3 of those families. Children reported hearing whispers from the walls and feeling watched as they slept. The detective delved deeper, sifting through construction records and historical archives. The house had once belonged to Eleanor Blackwood, a wealthy widow who had run a small orphanage on the premises during the early industrial era. Newspaper clippings mentioned 5 children who had vanished from her care. Authorities believed they had run away, a common fate for orphans of that time. When Eleanor passed away, workers renovating the house stumbled upon a sealed room behind the nursery wall. Inside lay children's belongings, tiny shoes, toys, and garments, but no bodies. The case turned cold, relegated to dusty archives. Interviews with former residents unraveled a disturbing pattern. Families with children recounted odd incidents, toys rearranged overnight, childish laughter echoing through empty corridors, and crayon drawings materializing on walls. Most dismissed these occurrences as mere imagination until the writings surfaced. The message differed slightly in each account. Don't let them find you. Don't make a sound. Don't let it hear you. Consistent handwriting, unveiled only during nursery repaintings. A forensic linguist compared the writing to samples from Eleanor Blackwood's journals. More unsettling were the handprints uniform in size and placement over decades, despite different children inhabiting the home. The investigation took a grim turn when the detective persuaded the current owners to permit ground-penetrating radar in the basement. Anomalies in the readings caught the technicians' eye. 5 distinct shapes beneath the concrete floor, each resembling a child's size. Breaking through the concrete unveiled a harrowing truth. 5 small sets of remains arranged in a circle. Forensic analysis revealed the children had perished during Eleanor's ownership. Each child bore a pendant engraved with their name, the 5 orphans who had supposedly fled. Luminol sprayed throughout the nursery exposed handprints in the darkness, concealed beneath layers of paint, unseen to the naked eye. Countless prints at various heights, as if the children had tried to escape. Eleanor's journals, retrieved from county archives, unveiled her twisted beliefs. She believed orphaned children possessed unique spiritual energy. By locking them in the hidden room, she aimed to siphon their life force to prolong her own existence. The children had etched warnings into the walls with nails and bits of metal, hoping future dwellers would uncover their fate. The case concluded with a proper burial for the 5 victims. Their names were finally recorded as murder victims, not runaways. The house stood deserted thereafter, the expectant couple refusing to return even for their possessions. Detective Klein submitted her final report, enclosing photographs of luminol-lit handprints and the hidden message under the paint. She noted that justice had been served for the victims, yet an inexplicable aura lingered in the house, something that reached out through time and paint layers. The nursery walls were demolished during cleanup, but workers reported hearing children's whispers amidst the debris. None dared to return after their shifts. The house met condemnation, another cold case consigned to a dusty cabinet, physical closure achieved, yet spiritual queries unanswered. The detective retained a photograph from the case, 5 glowing handprints in the darkness, a chilling reminder that certain crimes leave indelible marks, impervious to fresh coats of paint. Story 13, the aged apartment exuded an air of ancient secrets, where the heating system groaned and the pipes rattled in a rhythmic dance of forgotten whispers. It was a place where time seemed to linger, holding onto memories long past. A young woman, drawn to the enigmatic allure of the old building, found herself immersed in its mysterious embrace. As she wandered through the dimly lit corridors, a faint but distinct voice drifted through the vents, like a soft breeze carrying a message from another realm. It was not the usual noise of everyday life, it was a whisper, calling out to her, beckoning her into the shadows of the past. Intrigued and slightly unnerved, she pressed her ear against the cold metal grate, her heart quickening with each whispered word that reached her. "I know you can hear me," the voice murmured, a hint of playfulness in its tone, as if it held a secret meant only for her ears. Detective Morgan Shaw, a figure of quiet strength and unwavering determination, stood in the heart of the empty apartment, her gaze fixed on the rusted vent cover that had been pried open. Around her, the forensics team moved with silent precision, capturing the essence of the scene in flashes of light and shadow. The victim, Alina Reeves, had vanished without a trace, her absence unnoticed until the musty scent of decay permeated the air. Officer Patel, with a furrowed brow, recited the details from his notepad. Alina had spoken of hearing voices, of feeling a presence lurking in the shadows of her home. But her concerns had been dismissed as mere figments of an overactive imagination, lost in the echoes of an old building's creaks and groans. Shaw knelt beside the vent, her keen eyes tracing the deep scratches that marred its edges, a silent testament to a struggle unseen. The markings spoke of desperation, of a primal urge to escape a fate sealed within the confines of the walls. Alina's life, once vibrant and full of warmth, now painted a picture of fear and isolation, her world shrinking to the confines of her haunting whispers. The apartment held its secrets close, revealing glimpses of a life interrupted: a neatly made bed, a forgotten coffee mug, a chair positioned beneath the vent, as if waiting for a listener that never came. The threads of fate intertwined as Shaw delved deeper into the enigma that surrounded Alina's disappearance, each piece of the puzzle leading her closer to the truth hidden within the walls. The whispers of the past echoed in the fibers caught in the grating, in the fingerprint that bore no resemblance to Alina's touch. And as Shaw listened to the haunting recordings from Alina's phone, a chill crept into her soul, the voices of the unseen weaving a tapestry of dread and longing in the darkness. The history of the building unfurled like a dark tapestry, revealing a pattern of tenants who had come and gone, leaving behind whispers of their own. The superintendent, a man of quiet demeanor named Harold Weber, emerged as a shadowy figure in the unfolding drama, his calm facade masking a storm of secrets hidden within the walls. A hidden passage, concealed behind a loose tile in Alina's bathroom, unveiled a realm of shadows and whispers, a realm where someone had dwelled in silence, watching, waiting. Shaw's instincts led her to Weber's immaculate abode, where the facade of normalcy crumbled beneath the weight of damning evidence hidden in plain sight. The computer held the key to Weber's dark obsession, a digital archive of lives intertwined and shattered by his voyeuristic gaze. The recordings, the photographs, the journal entries painted a portrait of a man consumed by a twisted fantasy, a fantasy that had turned deadly in the shadows of the old building. Weber's arrest was a silent affair, his serene smile a mask for the darkness that lurked within his soul. As he spoke of the whispers that bound him to the building, Shaw felt a shiver run down her spine, a sense of foreboding that lingered long after he was led away in chains. The trial was a descent into madness and despair, a battle of wills between light and shadow, truth and lies. And as the jury delivered their verdict, Shaw felt a weight lift from her shoulders, a sense of closure mingled with the echoes of Aliner's whispers that still haunted the empty corridors of the old building. The apartment building, now a silent sentinel of forgotten dreams, stood as a testament to the darkness that lurked within its walls. The whispers of the past lingered in the cold drafts that whispered through the vents, in the creaks and groans of the aging pipes that wove a symphony of lost souls in the night. And as the new residents moved in, drawn by the allure of the old building's charm, they too would hear the whispers, feel the shiver of unseen eyes upon their skin. For in the shadows of the past, the echoes of a dark legacy lingered, waiting to be heard once more in the stillness of the night. Story 14. In the quiet town there stood a house at the edge of the woods, shrouded in mystery. Its windows were dark, its porch weary from the passage of time. No one laid claim to it, and its origins remained a puzzle lost to memory. The townsfolk never spoke of it, as if afraid to awaken the secrets it held within its weathered walls. One fateful day, a group of hikers ventured too close to the enigmatic house. As they drew near, a chilling sight greeted them, a list of names, deeply carved into the wooden siding like ominous messages. At the very bottom of the list gleamed a fresh name, untouched by the elements, unfamiliar to all but one among them. A hushed gasp escaped one of the hikers as he recognized the name etched into the house as his own. Mason Wright, the lead hiker, felt a shiver of fear crawl down his spine as he whispered, "That's mine." When the call came in the dead of night, the dispatch dismissed it as a routine trespassing incident. But the voice on the other end belonged to Mason, his tone fraught with unease. The responding officers anticipated a mere case of juvenile mischief, a simple act of vandalism. Little did they know that what awaited them defied all logic and reason. Detective Sarah Keller arrived at the scene as darkness cloaked the forest in its inky embrace. Her flashlight pierced through the shadows, revealing the eerie sight of the house with its chilling inscription. 27 names adorned the eastern wall, some faded with time, others sharp as if freshly carved. And at the very bottom, the name Mason Wright stood out, the wood still bearing traces of recent carving. Mason, bewildered and trembling in the cold night air, protested his innocence. "I've never been here before," he insisted. "I can't fathom how my name ended up on that wall." Thus began the investigation, delving into the backgrounds of each name listed. What they uncovered sent a shiver down their spines. Every name belonged to a person reported missing over the past 40 years, all vanishing while hiking alone in the woods. Some cases had grown cold with time, while others remained open, haunting reminders of lives abruptly cut short. Forensic analysts meticulously documented each carving, noting the different depths, techniques, and aging patterns. The oldest name, Rebecca Hansen, linked to a missing persons case from decades past, a young woman who had ventured into the woods never to return, leaving behind only a lone hiking boot by a stream. Interviews with Mason yielded no connections to the other names on the wall. His story remained consistent, his bewilderment genuine. The focus then shifted to his companions, leading to a startling discovery in the group. Photographers' images a spectral figure lurking in the background, unseen by the hikers. Detective Keller ordered a search of the abandoned house's interior, revealing a macabre collection of personal items belonging to the missing hikers, meticulously arranged on shelves in the basement. Watches, backpacks, cameras, wallets, all labeled with the corresponding names from the exterior wall. Traces of bloodstains revealed a grim history of attempted concealment. As the chilling truth unfurled, Mason's sanity began to fray. plagued by strange occurrences and a growing paranoia. The investigation unearthed hidden records linking the house to a reclusive hunter named Victor Blackwood, a man who had vanished without a trace years ago, his unsettling presence looming over the forest. Further exploration uncovered a network of hunting blinds in the woods, along with a journal detailing Blackwood's predatory observations of hikers, their movements and vulnerabilities. The manhunt intensified, but the elusive hunter remained one step ahead, slipping through the grasp of law enforcement. Mason's disappearance marked a turning point, with a grim message carved into his bedroom wall hinting at a deadly game of cat and mouse. The investigation spiraled into a desperate race against time, culminating in a chilling discovery within Blackwood's hidden workshop, a freshly carved name belonging to the very forensic technician who had processed the house. A tense vigil was set around the house, waiting for the hunter's return. In the dead of night, a tall, ghostly figure emerged from the shadows, defying all attempts at capture. The phantom vanished into the darkness, leaving only whispers of dread in its wake. To this day, the house stands under vigilant watch, a haunting reminder of the unspeakable horrors that lurk within. Mason and the technician were never found, their fates intertwined with the malevolent force that dwells in the heart of the woods. The names on the wall have become a grim legend, a chilling testament to the darkness that beckons the unwary into its grasp, never to return. Story 15. The old Polaroid held secrets long forgotten, a snapshot frozen in time, capturing a birthday celebration of the past. Smiles illuminated by flickering candles, a scene of joy and togetherness seemingly ordinary at first glance. But as the daughter sifted through the box of aged photos left behind by her mother, she noticed something unsettling. A shape lurking in the background of every picture, just at the edge of perception. A man shrouded in darkness, standing on the fringes of the family's happiness. He was a spectral presence, not belonging to the familiar faces in the foreground. No one could recall him being part of those cherished memories, yet there he was, growing closer with each passing photo. Sarah Winters uncovered the collection while sorting through her mother's attic following the somber event of her funeral. A simple cardboard box labeled Memories held within it a treasure trove of moments from bygone days, capturing family gatherings and milestones from her childhood. What should have been a comforting find, a glimpse into happier times, soon transformed into the catalyst for a chilling revelation. In the initial photo, he was a mere silhouette, a mysterious figure lingering on the periphery during her 7th birthday party. The shadowy presence stood near the glass door, a silent observer with features obscured from view. In the subsequent image, taken moments later, he had crept closer inside, and by the 3rd photo, he loomed ominously behind her unsuspecting uncle. No one in the frames seemed aware of his gradual encroachment. With trembling hands, Sarah reached out to her father, her voice quivering as she recounted the eerie discovery. "Dad, do you know who this man is in the background of all these pictures?" A heavy silence followed her inquiry, broken only by a sharp intake of breath. "What man? There shouldn't be anyone besides family," her father finally responded, his own unease palpable. Detective Marcus Reed attentively listened as Sarah laid out the mystifying photographs across his desk at the precinct, the patter of rain against the windows providing a soothing backdrop. Shadows danced across the evidence, casting an air of mystery over the unfolding investigation. The seasoned detective scrutinized each photo methodically, his keen eyes narrowing in concentration. "And no one recognized this individual?" he inquired, his tone a blend of neutrality and intrigue. "No one," Sarah affirmed, arranging the images in chronological order to reveal the eerie progression. As the detective studied the sequence, a dawning realization crept into the room. The figure moved purposefully through the captured moments, steadily advancing towards the children in the frame. In the final photograph, he stood hauntingly close behind Sarah's younger self, a ghostly hand outstretched towards her shoulder, just beyond the frame's edge. Reed speculated, suggesting the photographer as a possibility, but his own doubt lingered in the air. "My mother took these pictures. She set the timer and joined us in the frame," Sarah explained, dispelling the notion of an outside presence orchestrating the scenes. The detective, now intrigued, made copies of the photos and initiated a formal investigation. Days passed as Reed diligently contacted every surviving attendee of the birthday party in question. None could recall the enigmatic man from the photos. No hired help, no unexpected visitors, just a secluded countryside setting chosen for its privacy. Facial recognition software yielded no results, the figure expertly concealing his identity from the camera's lens. Yet there was a calculated precision in his movements, a deliberate intent that belied mere chance. The breakthrough came when Sarah unearthed more photographs from other family albums, spanning different occasions and years. The figure persisted, a silent presence in the background of various gatherings, always unnoticed in the moment. A skilled computer specialist enhanced the images, unveiling hidden details obscured by time. A scar on the wrist, a distinctive ring, a faint reflection revealing facial features previously obscured by shadow. The pivotal lead emerged from dental records, linking the shadowy figure to Robert Keller, a maintenance worker with a dark past. Keller had vanished after being linked to unsolved child abductions that had plagued the region decades ago, coinciding with the timelines of the documented gatherings. It was revealed that Keller had access to multiple rental properties, including the one where Sarah's birthday had taken place, a chilling connection that sent shivers down the spines of all involved. Authorities delved into Keller's history, unearthing buried secrets beneath the foundations of his former residence. Trinkets belonging to missing children, tangible remnants of unspeakable tragedies were uncovered. Among them, a hair clip matching a description from a long-lost girl, a toy car belonging to a vanished boy, and a bracelet that Sarah recognized as her own, a relic she had believed lost to time. Alone in her apartment, surrounded by the haunting photos that had unraveled a web of concealed horrors, Sarah received a call from the detective bearing grim news. Remains discovered near one of the rental properties had been identified through DNA analysis as one of the missing children. The closure was bittersweet, offering answers tainted by the grim realities they unveiled. Gazing at the final birthday photo, the faces of her family immortalized in a moment of joy, Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. The candles cast a warm glow, illuminating the scene of celebration. And there behind her younger self, partially obscured by shadow but undeniably present, stood the figure, patient, calculating, invisible to the revelers in that frozen fragment of time. The revelation tied together unsolved mysteries spanning decades, bringing a semblance of closure to grieving families. The shadow in the family photos had emerged from obscurity, his malevolent presence acknowledged at last after years of lurking unnoticed. Sarah tenderly gathered the photos, returning them to the box as tangible evidence of a chilling truth that sometimes the most sinister threats are those that move unseen through captured moments, weaving a tapestry of hidden terror within the fabric of time itself. Story 16, the realtor's advertisement had made no mention of a basement. The blueprint of the house gave no hint of its existence. Yet when the family decided to replace the worn-out carpet, they stumbled upon a hidden door. It was concealed beneath the floor, its handle coated with rust, heavy and unyielding. With combined effort, they managed to pry it open, revealing a passage shrouded in stale air, heavy with the scent of damp earth. A set of stairs descended into the darkness below. Expecting to find a storage space, they were met with a sight that sent shivers down their spines. In the dim light, a single bulb swayed above a lone chair, and on the wall behind it, a series of photographs, familiar faces staring back at them, captured within the confines of their own home. The Mercer family had settled into the suburban house during the cold grip of winter, charmed by its quaint exterior and the promise of history within its walls. But as they delved deeper into the hidden chamber beneath their living room, they realized that the house held secrets far darker and more twisted than they could have ever imagined. Detective Sarah Connors arrived at the property, her partner by her side, the crime scene cordoned off with fluttering yellow tape. Mrs. Mercer's voice trembled over the phone as she recounted the chilling discovery made beneath their own home. "We must document every detail before proceeding further," Connors instructed, methodically donning her latex gloves. Flashbulbs illuminated the narrow staircase as the forensic team meticulously cataloged the eerie scene. The basement was compact, resembling a standard bedroom in size, its concrete walls painted a somber shade of gray. In the center stood a solitary chair bolted firmly to the floor, while above it the bare bulb cast stark shadows that danced in the stillness of the room. However, it was the row of photographs that held the most disturbing revelation images spanning back weeks, capturing the Mercer family in intimate moments, their daily lives laid bare for an unseen observer. The investigation unfolded with perplexing results. There were no signs of forced entry, no evidence of theft or vandalism. The security system remained untouched, giving no indication of intrusion. Yet the privacy of the family had been violated in the most insidious manner. Fingerprints belonging to past owners of the house littered the basement, hinting at a sinister history woven into the very fabric of the property. Each previous family had resided there briefly before hastily selling the house at reduced prices, never mentioning the existence of a hidden basement. As Connors delved deeper into the past of the property, inconsistencies began to surface, blueprints altered between sales, permits revoked, and inspection reports tampered with. The breakthrough came during an interview with the contractor who had renovated the house years before. His denial of the existence of the basement clashed with the evidence before them, sparking a sense of dread that pervaded the investigation. Digital forensics uncovered a trove of images stored on a hidden memory card, portraying not just the Mercers but a succession of families who had inhabited the house. The violation extended beyond mere observation, delving into the realm of obsession. Audio recordings captured private conversations within the confines of the home, revealing a level of intrusion that chilled the investigators to the core. Behind the wall of photographs, a concealed passage led to a monitoring station where cameras captured every movement within the house. A journal chronicling the lives of each family was discovered, its pages filled with meticulous details and unsettling observations. The handwriting matched that of Edward Kelvin, the original builder of the house, whose mysterious disappearance added another layer of enigma to the unfolding saga. The final entries in the journal hinted at a disturbed mind, fixated on the families that came and went, oblivious to the presence that watched them from the shadows. Fingerprint analysis confirmed the unthinkable Edward Kelvin had never left the house. He had become a spectral presence, intertwined with the very structure he had constructed, a ghostly guardian fixated on the lives of those who dwelled within his creation. The manhunt that ensued culminated in the discovery of Kelvin hidden within the labyrinth of crawlspaces he had fashioned within the walls. His detached demeanor and convoluted explanations painted a picture of a man lost in his delusions, believing himself to be the rightful overseer of the house and its occupants. The families, including the Mercers, fled the property, leaving behind a legacy of trauma and violation. As the trial unfolded, the extent of Kelvin's surveillance network became apparent, revealing a meticulously planned system of observation points embedded within the house itself. The verdict rendered against him left Kelvin unfazed, his mind already ensconced within the walls of his own creation, where he continued to observe the echoes of lives that had passed through his domain. The property was razed to the ground, erasing the physical remnants of Kelvin's voyeuristic legacy. Yet for those who had called the house their home, the scars of intrusion lingered, a haunting reminder of the unseen eyes that had watched their every move. In moments of solitude, they found themselves casting wary glances at the corners of rooms, questioning the solitude of their surroundings, and pondering if they had ever truly been alone in the house that held secrets within its very walls. Story 17. Amidst the imminent destruction of the old library, the workers were on the brink of completing their task when a curious discovery halted their progress. A hidden latch previously unnoticed was stumbled upon by one of the laborers, nestled within the depths of a weathered bookshelf. With a gentle click, the entire shelf pivoted open, revealing a clandestine passage leading to a forgotten chamber. The air within was heavy, untouched by human presence for countless years. The room was devoid of furniture, save for a solitary chair positioned at its center, firmly bolted to the floor. Etched repeatedly upon the walls in a haunting fashion was a chilling message: "I am still here." The construction foreman swiftly contacted the authorities, and what had begun as a routine demolition swiftly transformed into a sinister enigma. Detective Morgan Walsh, a seasoned investigator with 2 decades of experience, stood at the threshold of the hidden room. His flashlight pierced the darkness, casting eerie shadows upon the walls adorned with the unsettling inscription. "Secure the scene," Walsh commanded the officers, his voice resonating through the confined space. "No one disturbs a thing until forensics arrives." The history of the building whispered tales of intrigue and tragedy. Once privately owned by the esteemed Harrington family, the library had been bequeathed to the public following the mysterious disappearance of their daughter, Rebecca. Vanishing during her final year of college, Rebecca left behind no trace save for her abandoned car near the wooded expanse. Despite exhaustive searches and interviews, her disappearance remained an unsolved enigma. The prevailing belief hinted that she had chosen to vanish of her own volition, yet her family steadfastly rejected such a notion, convinced of a more sinister truth. As forensic experts meticulously combed through the hidden chamber, traces of hair and fibers were discovered embedded within the aged chair. The scratches on the walls harbored faint hints of blood and skin cells beneath layers of neglect. Initial analysis pointed towards the biological remnants belonging to a young woman who had struggled fiercely against her restraints. Detective Walsh assembled a team to delve into the shadowed past of the Harrington family. A peculiar coincidence gnawed at his mind: the library's donation to the community had coincided closely with Rebecca's disappearance, a synchronicity that now bore weighty implications. Further scrutiny unearthed a disquieting revelation. The bookshelf concealing the hidden room had been installed by a contractor exclusively employed by Maxwell Harrington, Rebecca's uncle and the patriarch of the family. Financial records divulged exorbitant payments to this contractor, far surpassing standard renovation expenses. Former library staff expressed shock at the discovery, none having been privy to the concealed space. However, one elderly librarian recalled Maxwell's penchant for seclusion within that section of the building after hours, his solitary presence shrouded in mystery. Maxwell insisted that area remain untouched during any renovations, she recounted to the investigators, claiming it held irreplaceable historical significance in its original state. The investigation intensified as forensic analyses confirmed the DNA from the hidden chamber matched samples obtained from Rebecca's personal effects. The timeline began to crystallize, painting a harrowing portrait. Rebecca had not fled. She had been imprisoned behind the bookshelf, potentially by a member of her own kin. Armed with a warrant, the detectives scoured the Harrington estate, where a leather-bound journal concealed in a secret compartment of Maxwell's study unveiled a chilling truth. The journal chronicled months of obsessive fixation on his niece, culminating in a stark final entry. She threatened to expose everything. "I cannot allow that. The room will confine her until she sees reason." Maxwell, now residing in a coastal retirement community, crumbled under interrogation. Initially dismissive of the hidden room's existence, he faltered when faced with the damning evidence. "She jeopardized everything," he confessed tonelessly, devoid of remorse. "Rebecca unearthed evidence of my embezzlement from the family foundation. The family's reputation was paramount. I couldn't permit her to tarnish it." The admission unveiled a nightmarish tableau. Maxwell had lured Rebecca to the library, subdued her, and ensnared her within the hidden chamber. His intent had been to detain her until she relented, but fate veered off course. In a bid for freedom, Rebecca had confronted him, triggering a fatal altercation. "Panic seized me," Maxwell recounted in his confession. "I interred her beneath the chamber's floor and sealed it shut. Donating the building ensured that section would forever remain undisturbed." Subsurface scans confirmed the presence of human remains beneath the chamber's flooring. Upon excavation, Rebecca's skeletal remains were unearthed, adorned with the silver bracelet bestowed upon her by her parents on her 20th birthday. The Harrington family bore witness to Maxwell's sentencing, a somber gathering where justice was belatedly meted out. Clutching her daughter's recovered bracelet, Rebecca's mother found solace in the closure brought about after years of uncertainty. The cessation of the library's demolition transformed the site into a haven for lamentation and introspection. Community members tendered floral tributes at the entrance, honoring a life unjustly curtailed and a long-concealed truth that had patiently awaited discovery behind a veil of secrecy. In a poignant twist of fate, it was Rebecca's desperate message etched upon the walls, "I am still here," that ensured her memory endured, a testament to the enduring pursuit of justice and the eventual emergence of truth from the shadows. Story 18, the gentle current whispered a lullaby that morning, the water mirroring the sky in perfect stillness. The fisherman's gaze swept lazily over the tranquil surface, almost missing the incongruous sight of a suitcase bobbing near the shore. At first it seemed like a mere cast-off, discarded by the indifferent hands of the river. But as he drew closer, a pungent odor clawed its way into his senses, thick, suffocating, impossible to ignore. The case was a ghost of its former self, ensnared in chains that bore the scars of time's relentless embrace. When the authorities pried it open, it wasn't garments that greeted them, but a macabre sight. Strands of hair intertwined with fingers frozen in a final, desperate grasp. And at the bottom, a chilling message awaited, "This isn't the first." Detective Sarah Mercer, a shadow among shadows, raised a delicate handkerchief to her lips as she surveyed the desolate scene. The victim, a woman in her prime, now lay adrift in the realm of the departed, her once dark locks now a haunting tapestry of decay. The medical examiner moved with a solemn grace, each movement a silent elegy to the life that had fled this mortal coil. But amidst the solemnity, it was not the method of disposal that gripped Mercer's mind, but the eerie reverence with which the victim had been arranged, every detail a testament to a twisted form of care. Her nails meticulously tended, her hair styled with precision, her attire whispering of opulence. "She was not forsaken here," Mercer murmured, her voice lost in the murmurs of the river caressing the muddy shore. "She was readied, adorned." The name of the fallen soul emerged as Catherine Walsh, a purveyor of dreams in the realm of real estate. Divorced, childless, she dwelled in solitude within the gilded cocoon of an upscale neighborhood. Colleagues painted a portrait of ambition and secrecy, a woman who wielded perfection as her shield. Her absence had been noted by an assistant, a faithful companion in the realm of business, who spoke with a fervor born of concern. She would never abandon that appointment, the assistant insisted, the weight of worry heavy in their gaze. That sail was to be her crowning glory. Within the sanctuary of Walsh's modernist abode, investigators tiptoed through a world frozen in immaculate beauty. Each piece of designer furniture stood as a monument to symmetry, every surface a canvas untouched by the impurities of dust. The refrigerator whispered tales of meticulous planning, its contents a symphony of organization labeled by the passage of days. But a whisper of discord lingered in her home office, a drawer left ajar like an unanswered question. Nestled within, a leather-bound journal beckoned with secrets untold. The final entry etched in ink read, "He watches once more. The car remains, but the plates have changed." In the digital echoes of Walsh's existence, a peculiar dance unfolded. Unknown voices whispered in her inbox, bearing the same haunting refrain, "I witness your perfection." A symphony of synchronized messages, each a sinister echo of the other. The trail of her cyber footprints painted a portrait of a woman besieged by unseen threats, her searches veering towards the realms of protection and security. Mercer, a specter in pursuit of truth, wove a tapestry of connections between the fragments of evidence, a body meticulously displayed, a message of chilling familiarity. "Our adversary is a master of ritual," she confided to her partner in the shadows. "This was not a crime of passion. This was a macabre ceremony." A glimmer of light pierced the shroud of darkness from an unexpected source. A humble pawnshop proprietor recognized the gleam of Walsh's emerald necklace, a missing piece of a shattered puzzle. The pawnbroker's tale wove a web of familiarity around Michael Linden, a figure of unassuming presence, a custodian of silence. Surveillance whispers painted a portrait of Linden's comings and goings, his presence a ghostly specter haunting Walsh's sanctuary. Within the confines of his modest dwelling, a trove of secrets awaited discovery. Walls adorned with the visages of Walsh and her ilk, captured in moments of vulnerability. A macabre collection, some marked with the crimson stain of rejection. Walsh stood as the third in a line of dark muses. Behind a veil of deceit within Linden's sanctuary, a shrine emerged from the shadows. Trinkets of the fallen souls laid out with a precision bordering on reverence, a lock of hair, a tissue stained with the essence of life, keys to doors now forever closed, each offering accompanied by a journal chronicling the minutiae of their existence, a symphony of obsessions. The interrogation room trembled with a chill as Linden faced the judgment of his peers. His demeanor a mask of serenity, his voice a whisper carried on the winds of inevitability. "They were flawed," he intoned, his words a dirge of distorted truths. "They paraded their perfection, but I saw through their facade." Catherine's desk harbored chaos. Her lipstick bore the blemish of neglect. Her perfection was a lie. The quest for the predecessors of Walsh, as mentioned in the cryptic note, unfurled a tale of sorrow in remote corners. 2 more suitcases surfaced, each a sepulchre for souls similar in essence to Walsh souls who peddled perfection with every breath, souls who danced on the precipice of obsession. In the hallowed halls of justice, Lyndon stood as a statue of remorse, his visage a mask of indifference as the eulogy of his deeds resounded. Months of meticulous stalking, the weaving of a tapestry of lives cut short by the shears of delusion. The families of the fallen watched in silence as the gavel of fate struck its final chord, a life sentence without the promise of redemption. For Mercer, the shadows whispered of closure, but the specter of unanswered questions lingered like a ghost in the night. What whispered demons drove Lyndon to his grim pursuits? What chasm of imperfection within himself did he seek to fill through his twisted art? The river, a witness to the tale of woe, continued its eternal journey downstream, its depths swallowing all traces of the past. But in the heart of the precinct, atop Mercer's desk, rested echoes of a nightmare, the haunting journals that bore witness to the darkness that lurked behind the facades of normalcy. A reminder that in the quiet corners of ordinary lives, monsters may dwell, waiting for the moment of revelation, waiting for the mask of perfection to slip and reveal the abyss within. Story 19. In the attic, concealed beneath a worn blanket, they stumbled upon it. A porcelain doll, aged and fragile, with eyes of painted blue that seemed to hold secrets untold. Sarah and Michael, a young couple, dismissed it with laughter as just another forgotten relic of the past. Yet that night, as they drifted off to sleep, a subtle shift in the air made them uneasy. The silence felt heavy, pregnant with unseen whispers. And when morning dawned, the doll was no longer in the attic. It sat solemnly at the foot of their bed. The Victorian house they had purchased at auction beckoned to them with its intricate woodwork and enigmatic allure, despite whispers of a troubled history that clung to its walls like shadows. Little did they know that they would soon be entwined in its enigmatic narrative. Detective Rachel Winters was summoned on a crisp autumn morning to investigate a chilling discovery. The female victim, found in the master bedroom, was posed in a contorted manner, her eyes wide with a frozen expression of terror. Nearby, the male victim appeared as if he had been attempting to flee. The scene, eerily pristine, offered no clues of a struggle or forced entry, just a sense of deliberate arrangement that sent shivers down Detective Winters' spine. As the investigation unfurled, tales from neighbors painted a tapestry of unease. A shadow glimpsed from an upstairs window, childlike laughter echoing through the empty house. Each account added a layer of disquiet to the already perplexing puzzle. Forensic analysis revealed traces of antique doll materials scattered throughout the house, most concentrated around the victims, and the attic, an unsettling revelation that defied conventional logic. Delving into the property's history uncovered a haunting pattern, previous owners meeting mysterious fates under puzzling circumstances, each incident cloaked in unresolved enigmas. A newspaper clipping from decades past unveiled a tragic tale of a dollmaker and his daughter, shrouded in suspicion and tragedy. The final creation of the dollmaker, a perfect replica of his departed child, bore an eerie resemblance to the doll found by Sarah and Michael. The enigmatic connections deepened as Detective Winters unearthed hidden photographs depicting the dollmaker's collection, with the same haunting doll appearing to shift positions between frames. Infrared scans revealed spectral handprints tracing a spectral path from the attic to the master bedroom, along with an inexplicable mixture of porcelain dust and unidentified organic matter. A revelation from a distant relative of the dollmaker hinted at arcane practices and the binding of spirits to inanimate forms, imbuing them with a semblance of life beyond comprehension. The investigation hit a dead end, with no suspects, no tangible explanations, only a lingering sense of foreboding that clung to the unsolved case like a shadow. A peculiar turn of events saw the doll vanish from police custody, leaving behind a baffling void in its wake. Detective Winters, her memory veiled in a fog, found herself at her desk with no recollection of the night's events, the security footage offering no solace in its eerie stillness. The house, burdened by its tragic legacy, changed hands once more, its price dwindling as whispers of its haunted past circulated. The new owners discovered the attic devoid of the doll, save for a solitary blanket draped in a corner, a silent testament to the enigma that had eluded resolution. As the unsolved case faded into the annals of mystery, Detective Winters chose an early retirement, her final act shrouded in secrecy as she safeguarded a photograph of the enigmatic dollmaker and his creations, sealed away with a warning never to unveil its contents. The new occupants reported tranquil nights undisturbed by spectral echoes, opting to leave the attic undisturbed in a silent pact with the unknown. Yet on whispered breezes of twilight, tales emerged of a spectral presence behind the attic window, accompanied by the faint laughter of a child, a haunting echo of a past that refused to be forgotten. Story 20. The worn plank shifted under her weight, drawing her focus to a subtle disturbance. Stooping down, she traced the edges with her fingertips, sensing the concealed void beneath the seemingly solid floor. Intrigued, she carefully pried up the boards, unveiling a shadowy, cramped space beneath the house. Initially shrouded in dust and cobwebs, the darkness slowly revealed its secrets to her searching eyes. A mattress, a chair. And tucked away in a corner, a weathered notebook filled with the repetition of a name, her own name, scrawled over and over. Detective Morgan Reed stood silently behind Sarah Coleman as she peered into the abyss beneath her new dwelling. The fear etched on Sarah's face spoke of a deeper disturbance than mere discovery. It hinted at a violation of security, an encroachment of malevolence into what was meant to be a fresh beginning. "Do not disturb anything further," Detective Reed's voice, calm yet resolute, directed Sarah. Clicking on her flashlight, she cast light into the hidden space, revealing walls plastered with surveillance photographs, images capturing Sarah's every move, her every interaction. A shrine of obsession concealed right beneath her feet. Sarah had acquired the quaint cottage from the estate of an elderly man named Walter Green, a solitary figure who had passed away with no known kin. The property had stood empty for months before finding its way onto the market, described in the real estate listing as charming and in need of minor touch-ups. No mention had been made of anything out of the ordinary during inspections or the sale process. "I never laid eyes on him, the previous owner," Sarah murmured. Neighbors mentioned he kept to himself. "I was informed that basement access had been sealed off long ago. That's what the inspection report stated." Crime scene investigators arrived, their equipment clunking against the wooden floorboards as they entered. They meticulously documented everything, gathering evidence, and eventually removing the mattress, chair, and notebook from the hidden enclave. Forensic experts later uncovered numerous fingerprints throughout the space, all belonging to Walter Green. What unsettled the investigators most was the timeline they reconstructed. Utility records and dated photographs within the chamber indicated that Walter had been surveilling Sarah for a minimum of 3 years before his demise. He had shadowed her at community gatherings, frequented the same grocery store, and even visited the cafe where she occasionally worked. Yet Sarah had no memory of ever crossing paths with him. This level of fixation often escalates, the department psychologist remarked in a briefing. The subject progresses from fantasy to plotting. The hidden room suggests he was preparing for something more direct. Detective Reed's inquiry took an unexpected turn when she interviewed Walter's former colleague from the maintenance department at the local shopping center. The man appeared uneasy, toying with his wedding ring throughout their conversation. Walter spoke of her at times, he confessed. He claimed she reminded him of someone. I assumed it was just an old man's infatuation. I never imagined. His voice trailed off, his gaze fixed on his hands. Did he ever mention any schemes involving her? Reed probed, not explicitly, but he had this phrase he'd repeat about how she belonged with him. I took it as mere words. Reed obtained a warrant to search Walter's workplace locker, left untouched since his passing. Inside, they uncovered a key that did not correspond to any locks in Walter's residence. Tracing the serial number led them to a storage unit registered under his name. With a grating sound, the metal door of the unit rolled open. Neatly arranged within were replicas of furniture from Sarah's former apartment, her bed, her desk, even her living room set. Walter had painstakingly recreated her living space down to the smallest details. A mannequin adorned with a wig mirroring Sarah's hairstyle sat at the duplicate desk. Most chilling of all was a calendar marked with a date just 1 week after Walter's sudden demise from a heart attack. The date was encircled in red, bearing a single word scrawled across it: together. Further investigation unveiled that Walter had been institutionalized in his youth due to an obsession with a female teacher. His records indicated treatment for erotomania, a delusion where the individual believes someone is in love with them despite evidence to the contrary. Released and living incident-free for decades, something about Sarah reignited his dormant fixations. At the police station, Reed spread out crime scene photos on the conference table. He departed believing they shared a unique bond. In his mind, they were destined to be united. Could she have encountered him somewhere, sparked this fixation inadvertently? Another detective inquired. Reed shook her head. Nothing traceable. Sometimes these obsessions require very little. A smile exchanged with a stranger, a fleeting moment of eye contact. For someone with his past, that could be enough. Sarah opted to sell the house, unable to find solace within its walls. During the final walkthrough with her real estate agent, she stood in the living room, arms wrapped protectively around herself. I cannot shake the thought of what might have unfolded if he hadn't passed away when he did, she whispered. If I had not noticed that loose plank, how long would I have dwelled here, oblivious to his watchful eye, unaware of the secrets hidden beneath my very feet? Following Walter's demise, the case was officially closed, labeled as stalking with intent to abduct, though the abduction itself never materialized. Psychological evaluations of the evidence indicated that Walter had intended to confine Sarah either within the hidden chamber or the storage unit. Sarah relocated far away, altering her routines and safeguarding her personal information more vigilantly. Detective Reed occasionally checked in on her, an unspoken acknowledgement of how narrowly Sarah had escaped becoming another tragic statistic, another casualty. The cottage found new owners in a young couple oblivious to its dark history. The concealed chamber was properly sealed, the floorboards replaced, life persisted. Yet for those privy to the truth, the tale of the room beneath the floor served as a chilling reminder of the unseen perils that lurk, of monsters who evade capture, and of victims who never grasp how close they came to their own demise. Story 21. The aged envelope, its edges tinged with the passage of time, bore a fresh stamp, as though just sent on its way. With a careful touch, the detective unfolded its contents. Inside lay a single sheet of paper, bearing a message typed hastily in an uneven script. I am sorry for what I did. A dampness clung to the paper, carrying with it a faint scent of iron. It was then that the detective's gaze fell upon a reddish smear along the bottom edge, a mark that whispered of something darker than mere ink. Detective Sarah Morgan, with practiced precision, placed the letter into an evidence bag, her gloved hands mindful of the significance. The forensics team had confirmed her suspicions. The reddish stain was human blood, its DNA a match to an unsolved homicide that had long haunted the department. The victim, a young journalist named Rebecca Warren, had been discovered in her apartment, bearing the brutal wounds of a violent attack. Her laptop was missing, her notes scattered, hinting at a connection to a story she had been pursuing. Despite exhaustive efforts, the case had remained cold until this enigmatic letter arrived at the police station, addressed simply to the Homicide Division. Few fingerprints adorned the paper and envelope, only faint smudges hinting at gloved hands. The postmark, however, offered a rare light for the investigators. Gathering her team in the dimly lit briefing room, Detective Morgan pinned the letter at the heart of a sea of crime scene images and investigative dead ends. "This changes everything," she declared to the room. "Our perpetrator shows signs of remorse." Detective James Chen, her steadfast partner in this enduring case, scrutinized the letter thoughtfully. "Or perhaps they seek to deceive us with this display," he countered. "The blood may be a ploy, a theatrical gesture meant to taunt us." Tracing the unique typewriter impression patterns to a model long out of production, the forensics team embarked on a quest through antique shops and collector circles in search of the elusive machine. As the investigation gained momentum, the detectives delved into Rebecca's life, uncovering her relentless pursuit of truth and justice. Her investigations had led her to a wealthy family embroiled in a web of deceit and power struggles. The family's patriarch's recent demise had sparked a bitter feud over inheritance and secrets long buried. In their quest for answers, the detectives revisited Rebecca's boyfriend, Michael Barnes. His demeanor, once solid and grief-stricken, now betrayed a nervous unease in the presence of the incriminating letter. Rebecca spoke of being followed, he confessed. "I dismissed her fears as paranoia fueled by her investigations. I should have listened." As the detectives delved deeper into this new light, a second letter arrived, bearing the same typewritten message in blood. This time the confession revealed a chilling truth. She uncovered too much about the family, about the inheritance, about what truly befell the old man. "I never intended for it to escalate that far." The trail led the investigators to the grand mansion of the deceased patriarch, where they confronted the eldest son, Richard. Suspicion fell upon him as his collection of antiquities included vintage typewriters akin to the one used for the letters. His alibis seemed rehearsed, his composure too polished to be genuine. The breakthrough came with the discovery of microscopic fibers on the envelopes, linking them to custom stationery belonging to the family's youngest daughter, Elena. Further investigation revealed Richard's manipulation of Eleanor's stationery for his sinister correspondence. A search of Richard's residence unveiled a hidden chamber adorned with evidence clippings about Rebecca, surveillance materials, and the vintage typewriter that sealed his fate. The blood analysis confirmed the blood as Rebecca's own. The unsuspected link between Richard and Michael emerged through financial transactions, indicating a sinister partnership in the tragic events leading to Rebecca's demise. Confronted with the evidence, Michael confessed to unwittingly setting the wheels in motion by revealing Rebecca's damning discoveries to Richard, never anticipating the fatal outcome. Eleanor's pivotal recording captured Richard's damning words, sealing his fate. As Richard attempted to flee, he was apprehended and the legal proceedings commenced. Amidst his protestations of innocence, the overwhelming evidence laid bare the truth. The jury's swift deliberation culminated in a guilty verdict, bringing a semblance of closure to Rebecca's grieving parents. The blood-stained letters, now held in evidence, stood as a poignant reminder that even the most meticulous crimes leave traces, and that the weight of guilt, whether genuine or calculated, can be the undoing of even the most cunning perpetrators. Rebecca Warren's case became a beacon in detective lore, a testament to the power of intuition and persistence over high-tech wizardry. It underscored the notion that sometimes the key to unlocking a mystery lies in the echoes of an old typewriter and the haunting specter of remorse that shadows those who believe they've crafted the perfect crime. Story 22. I'm in the post, tucked inside a plain envelope with no sender's details. A solitary brass key weathered by time's touch. The homeowner, puzzled by its unfamiliar appearance, sensed a strange familiarity lingering around it. Testing it in every lock she owned, the key refused to turn for her. It belonged to no door in her dwelling, yet when she set it down on the coffee table, the ancient grandfather clock in the hallway emitted a solitary, eerie chime despite its long-standing state of disrepair. Sarah Miller, unsettled by the inexplicable event, promptly informed the authorities upon discovering the mysterious key. What began as a peculiar incident swiftly unraveled into a deeply unsettling criminal inquiry that would shake the tranquil suburban neighborhood to its core. The initial responding officer brushed off Sarah's worries as inconsequential, a mere key in the mail, possibly a mix-up, he proposed. However, Sarah's intuition insisted that something was amiss. The officer, somewhat reluctantly, accepted the key as evidence, more to pacify her concerns, sealing it in a small evidence bag that would later become pivotal in a sprawling investigation. Detective Robert Harmon was handed the case file during the morning briefing. A seasoned investigator from the Special Victims Unit, he possessed a knack for discerning cases that transcended their seemingly innocuous beginnings. The brass key sat on his desk, outwardly unremarkable yet carrying an unsettling aura. Delving into Sarah's background revealed no traces of criminal activity. A retired high school English teacher, widowed, with 2 grown children residing across the country, Sarah appeared to be exactly who she professed, an unsuspecting recipient of a mysterious object. Forensic analysis unveiled no fingerprints on the key save for Sarah's. The envelope yielded no leads, bearing only a generic postmark from the regional distribution center. No DNA, no trace evidence. The key itself, a standard Schlage worn with age and likely several years old, posed a baffling mystery. The breakthrough arrived unexpectedly when Detective Harmon decided to cross-reference the key's unique bidding pattern with the department's database. A cold case from 7 years past surfaced, documenting an identical key pattern linked to a storage unit where investigators had uncovered blood-stained carpet, cutting tools, and images of unidentified women. The original investigation had hit a dead end due to insufficient evidence to pinpoint a suspect. Harmon retrieved the dusty case files. The detective who had overseen the case had retired, and the storage unit had been rented under a false identity, the fee paid in cash. Surveillance footage had long been erased. The evidence collected had yielded partial DNA profiles, yet no matches in any criminal database. The images retrieved from the storage unit depicted 5 women, all seemingly unconscious. Only 3 of them had been identified during the initial investigation, all reported missing but never located. Their cases remained open, deemed suspected homicides without bodies. Sarah Miller failed to recognize any of the women in the photographs presented to her. As the inquiry progressed, she grew increasingly apprehensive, fortifying her home with enhanced locks and a security system. The lingering question echoed, why had someone sent her this key? Harmon ordered a fresh analysis of the original evidence using modern techniques. The partial DNA sample was expanded and ran through genealogical databases, leading to a distant familial match, a second cousin twice removed from the suspect. Tracing back through family trees, investigators honed in on Harold Jenkins, a former neighbor of Sarah Miller who had relocated 2 streets away around 6 years ago, his current whereabouts unknown. Further exploration unveiled Jenkins as a substitute teacher at the same school where Sarah had taught, although their documented interactions were minimal. His employment records revealed a spotty work history, prolonged unexplained absences, and frequent relocations. A search of his prior residence turned up no unusual findings. Neighbors described him as unassuming, a solitary figure who kept to himself a familiar narrative that often follows revelations about predators concealed in plain sight. The pivotal question lingered: why dispatch the key to Sarah now? Harmon speculated it could be a trophy, a foreboding message, or perhaps a chilling invitation. The hunt for Jenkins intensified. His driver's license had lapsed, no recent credit card activity, no tax filings, a deliberate effort to stay off the grid, leaving behind no digital traces as most individuals do. The grim reality of the case unfolded when authorities probed a small cabin registered under Jenkins' late mother's name. Beneath the aged wooden floorboards, investigators stumbled upon a hidden chamber accessible only through a concealed trapdoor. Inside, meticulously arranged shelves housed numerous identical brass keys, each engraved with a name and date on a small attached tag. 5 of the keys corresponded to the women pictured in the photographs. The remaining 27 keys unveiled a harrowing implication of additional victims previously unknown to law enforcement. Buried behind the cabin, forensic teams unearthed human remains. The excavation persisted for weeks as multiple bodies in various stages of decay were unearthed. Sarah received continuous protection as the nationwide manhunt for Jenkins expanded. Behavioral analysts posited that the key symbolized a twisted gesture, Jenkins selecting Sarah as a recipient to acknowledge his artistry. The media christened him the Keymaster, a moniker that swiftly spread across national headlines. Fear permeated the community as residents grappled with the realization that such horrors had lurked among them unnoticed. Tracking dogs trailed a scent from the cabin into the surrounding wilderness. Search teams scoured thick forested areas. Thermal drones surveyed rugged terrains inaccessible to ground units. The manhunt burgeoned into one of the region's largest endeavors. A wildlife enthusiast capturing images in remote woods snapped a photo resembling Jenkins, a bearded man with hollow eyes carrying a backpack venturing deeper into the wilderness. Authorities cordoned off the area, establishing a perimeter. Tactical squads navigated treacherous landscapes while psychological profilers predicted Jenkins's reluctance to surrender, suggesting he may have prepared for such a scenario with hidden supplies and escape routes. The final showdown unfolded when a patrolling officer encountered Jenkins trying to cross a river. Rather than submit, Jenkins retreated to higher ground, barricading himself in an abandoned fire observation tower. Negotiators attempted communication for hours to no avail. Upon breaching the tower, tactical teams discovered Jenkins deceased from a self-inflicted wound. Beside him lay a journal chronicling his crimes in detail, alongside a solitary brass key identical to the one sent to Sarah. Within a waterproof container, investigators unearthed further evidence, including photographs, maps pinpointing burial sites, and personal effects taken from victims, a meticulously preserved chronicle of atrocities spanning nearly a decade. The final entry in the journal addressed Sarah directly. "You never noticed me, but I observed every facet of you. The key unlocks nothing physical because what I desire to bestow upon you cannot be accessed with metal, only through recognition. Now all will remember my name." Subsequent investigations unveiled a total of 32 victims. Families who had agonized over missing relatives for years finally received closure, albeit accompanied by the crushing weight of confirmed tragedy. Unable to come to terms with the proximity of such horror to her ordinary existence, Sarah refrained from returning to her home. Examination of the grandfather clock that had chimed mysteriously unveiled a concealed wireless receiver Jenkins had been watching, waiting for the moment she received his gift. The case endures as one of the most chilling examples of predatory behavior concealed behind a veneer of normalcy. Psychological researchers pore over Jenkins's writings, seeking insights to identify similar offenders before they strike. And somewhere in an evidence vault, a collection of brass keys stands as silent witnesses to lives cut short, each key opening to nothing tangible, yet unveiling a harsh truth about the darkness that sometimes lurks behind unassuming appearances. Story 23. The old house had stood silent and empty, shrouded in whispers of a past tragedy. For years it remained untouched, a haunting reminder of the young woman who had vanished without a trace. When the new tenants crossed the threshold, they were met with a sense of unease that lingered in the stale, dust-laden air. The bedroom, locked from within, held secrets waiting to be unveiled. Upon forcing the stubborn door open, they were greeted by a scene frozen in time. The bed neatly made, the mirror devoid of smudges, and a lone candle extinguished, its wax a testimony to time slipping away. But it was the notebook, open on the desk with fresh ink staining its pages, that drew them in. The final entry, penned by the missing woman herself, spoke of fear and an unseen watcher lurking in the shadows. Detective Morgan delved into the cryptic writings, each word unfolding a tale of deception and danger. Elise Winters, a name etched in mystery, had vanished into the night, leaving behind a trail of breadcrumbs in her meticulously written journal. Her disappearance, a puzzle waiting to be solved, had baffled investigators for years. As the detective pored over the notebook, a faint chemical scent hung in the air, mingling with the musty odor of neglect. The landlord, a specter in the doorway, whispered of forgotten checks and locked doors that should have remained open. Elise's life, once orderly and meticulous, had spiraled into a web of deceit and betrayal. Her work at a prestigious law firm had unearthed dark truths hidden within financial dealings. The numbers didn't add up, the documents were falsified, and Elise had stumbled upon a conspiracy that threatened to shatter the facade of respectability. Her pursuit of justice had led her down a dangerous path, one that ultimately swallowed her whole. The room, a silent witness to Elise's final moments, revealed little to the probing eyes of the investigators. No signs of struggle, no bloodstains, just a snapshot frozen in time, waiting to be unfurled. But beneath the surface, hidden in plain sight, lay the key to unlocking the truth. A concealed compartment, a flash drive, and a key to a safe deposit box at a distant bank, each piece of the puzzle leading closer to the heart of darkness. Financial dealings, manipulated data, and a deadly drug trial emerged from the shadows, casting a damning light on those who thought themselves untouchable. Vincent Harriman, a man of power and influence, stood at the center of the storm, his hands stained with blood and deception. The evidence, circumstantial yet damning, painted a portrait of a man willing to go to any lengths to protect his secrets. The hidden passage, a gateway to the truth, unveiled a sinister plot that had remained hidden for far too long. As the pieces fell into place, justice loomed on the horizon, a specter in the night waiting to be acknowledged. Harriman's arrest, the unraveling of a carefully constructed facade, and the revelation of Elise's fate marked the beginning of the end. The truth, once buried in shadows, now stood exposed for all to see. In the courtroom, Elise's mother's voice rang out, a poignant reminder of a daughter lost but not forgotten. The room, a silent witness to a life cut short, stood as a testament to the courage and determination of a woman who refused to be silenced. Justice, though delayed, had finally come knocking on the door of the guilty. The house, a relic of the past, now stood empty once more, its secrets laid bare but not erased. A whisper of a light flickering in the upstairs window, a ghostly echo of a life extinguished too soon, lingered in the night. Elise's legacy, a beacon of truth in a world shrouded in darkness, remained etched in the walls of the empty house, a reminder that justice, in the end, always finds a way to prevail. Story 24. It started with a faint, distant sound, a pocket dial filled with static and muffled echoes. The operator almost dismissed it as a glitch until a voice broke through the interference. A woman's voice, barely audible, whispered urgently, "He's here." And then silence enveloped the line, leaving behind only a chilling void. The mysterious call originated from an empty house, a dwelling that had stood deserted for years, untouched by human presence. No signs of forced entry, no traces of disturbance. Yet in the dimly lit kitchen, amidst the layers of dust, there sat a phone on the counter, its screen softly illuminating the silent room. The call had been placed mere minutes ago, a ghostly echo reverberating through the silent walls. Detective Morgan Reed found herself ensnared by the haunting whisper, its essence lingering in the air: desperation, fear, and an eerie impossibility. The vacant property belonged to the Sullivan family, who had left in haste after a devastating fire ravaged the west wing of their home. Since then, the house had remained uninhabited, visited only sporadically by a caretaker who swore no intruders had breached its walls. "Background check on the number," Morgan inquired, turning to her partner, Detective Walsh. The answer revealed a connection to Catherine Sullivan, the deceased daughter of the former homeowners. Catherine had perished in a tragic car accident 3 years prior, her presence now a spectral enigma haunting the abandoned abode. The enigma deepened as the investigators delved further into the inexplicable occurrence. A deceased woman's phone, emitting calls from a forsaken house, defying all rational explanation. The forensic scrutiny revealed no tangible leads, no fingerprints save for elusive smudges that defied identification. The aura of eerie mystery enveloped the scene, as if the phone had materialized out of thin air, disrupting the settled dust on the counter. The heart of the investigation became the cryptic recording, the 11 seconds of static, faint breathing, and the 5 chilling words that echoed through the void. Voice analysis confirmed the spectral whisper as that of Catherine Sullivan, with an unsettling 98% certainty. The timestamp of the call aligned precisely with the moment of Catherine's tragic demise, a convergence of past and present that defied the laws of reality. Interviews with those who knew Catherine unveiled fragments of a tumultuous past. Her father, now remarried, appeared genuinely perplexed. Her mother, a solitary figure in a modest apartment, crumbled upon hearing the spectral message, recognizing her daughter's voice filled with primal fear. Mark Jennings, Catherine's former boyfriend, had an airtight alibi for the night of the call, his whereabouts corroborated by witnesses and security footage. Yet the spectral call persisted as a lingering enigma, a haunting echo from beyond the veil. The breakthrough arrived in the form of a journal unearthed from Catherine's belongings, a journal that chronicled a descent into darkness within her relationship with Mark. The entries spoke of love twisted into control, of isolation and mounting dread, culminating in a chilling prophecy: "If anything happens to me, it wasn't an accident." Confronted with the damning evidence, Mark's facade crumbled under the weight of scrutiny. The investigation took a sinister turn as buried secrets came to light, unearthed by the relentless pursuit of justice. Ground-penetrating radar uncovered Catherine's actual phone, buried near the site of her fatal crash, revealing a sinister truth hidden beneath layers of deception. The grim reality emerged as forensic analysis exposed a web of lies and deceit, the deleted texts, the orchestrated tragedy, and the chilling revelation of a life cut short by malevolent hands. The pieces fell into place, painting a portrait of a manipulative predator who had preyed upon the vulnerable, leaving a trail of devastation in his wake. As the manhunt culminated in Mark's apprehension, the truth unfurled like a dark tapestry of deception and betrayal. His chilling confession echoed through the interrogation room, a twisted justification for his heinous acts. But justice, relentless and unwavering, prevailed as the jury delivered a swift verdict of first-degree murder. The specter of Catherine's voice, once a ghostly whisper in the void, now resonated with a different kind of power, a testament to her resilience, her courage, and her unwavering quest for justice. The phone from the abandoned house, now a silent relic of a dark chapter, stood as a reminder that even in the depths of darkness, echoes of truth can still pierce through the veil of lies. And so the spectral phone remained in the evidence locker, a silent sentinel bearing witness to a tale of tragedy and triumph, of voices silenced but never extinguished. Catherine's story endured not as a ghostly myth, but as a beacon of hope, a reminder that even in the silence of the night, justice can find its voice, echoing through the corridors of time. Story 25, The Enigma of Rebecca Thorne. She wiped away the mist on the mirror, gazing at her own reflection. Everything seemed normal at first glance, her face, her attire. Yet a subtle sense of unease crept over her as she continued to peer into the mirror. A flicker caught in the corner of her eye, a movement not of her own making. And when she turned away, her reflection remained motionless, watching. Thus began the perplexing tale of Rebecca Thorne, sparked by that eerie moment in her bathroom. What unfolded would baffle investigators and cast a shadow over the community for years to come. Rebecca resided in a modest apartment in a serene suburban enclave, living a solitary existence. Known to her friends as meticulous and introverted, she maintained a polite distance from others while remaining amiable with her neighbors. Her occupation as a data analyst for a medium-sized company dictated a life of order and exactitude. There was nothing about her that hinted at her becoming the focal point of one of the most mystifying criminal inquiries of the era. The initial signs were subtle. Objects within her apartment seemed to have shifted, no items missing, just rearranged. A coffee mug placed on a different shelf, books shuffled around, her toothbrush misplaced. Initially brushing off these anomalies as mere lapses in memory, Rebecca attributed them to her prolonged hours spent under harsh fluorescent lights, scrutinizing spreadsheets until her vision blurred. Detective Marion Shaw was alerted to the situation when Rebecca, after enduring weeks of these disturbances, finally sought help from the authorities. The initial evaluation suggested no criminal activity, perhaps a matter best addressed by mental health services rather than law enforcement. Shaw duly recorded the complaint but relegated it to the stack of non-urgent cases. There was nothing concrete, Shaw later recounted. No signs of forced entry, no missing items, just a woman plagued by a sense of unease within her own home. The pivotal moment arrived with the incident in the bathroom mirror. During her subsequent interaction with the police, Rebecca vividly recounted how her reflection appeared to move independently, how she felt a constant gaze upon her even in solitude. This time she presented evidence, footage from a security camera she had installed, focused on her front door. The recording unveiled a truth that sent shivers down the spines of even the most seasoned officers. The grainy video depicted Rebecca leaving for work in the morning, only to reveal someone identical to her using a key to access her apartment 20 minutes later. Forensic experts scrutinized the footage for signs of tampering or digital manipulation, but their search yielded no evidence of foul play. The person entering the apartment mimicked Rebecca's movements, attire, and even carried the same distinctive leather bag. However, Rebecca had already been recorded badging into her office building across town by her workplace security system at the same time. "We are facing a doppelganger scenario," Detective Shaw informed her superiors. "Someone who has meticulously studied Ms. Thorne and can replicate her with uncanny precision." The investigation intensified. Fingerprints found throughout the apartment matched only Rebecca's own, and no foreign DNA was unearthed. Neighbors reported nothing out of the ordinary, just Rebecca's routine comings and goings. Mrs. Keller, a neighbor, mentioned greeting Rebecca upon her return home one evening, receiving no response, a behavior which struck her as unusual but not alarming. Rebecca commenced documenting the disturbances in a journal. Minor alterations within her living space began to accumulate. Unidentified food vanished from her refrigerator, her computer displayed searches she had not initiated, and most unsettlingly, she stumbled upon photographs on her phone, selfies of herself which she had no recollection of capturing. In some images, her expression appeared subtly awry, the smile too wide, the gaze too intense. "I feel as though I am descending into madness," she confided to Detective Shaw during their third meeting. "Or perhaps someone is orchestrating my descent." A breakthrough emerged when investigators discerned a pattern in the security footage. The doppelganger only infiltrated when Rebecca departed for specific engagements, therapy sessions, yoga classes, Sunday morning grocery trips. These were prearranged activities of predictable durations. "Someone is intimately familiar with your routine," Shaw elucidated. "This is not haphazard, it is calculated surveillance and infiltration." A forensic psychologist posited that they were dealing with a case of fixation, a person fixated on becoming Rebecca, living her life, and possibly aiming to supplant her entirely. Such instances were uncommon but documented in psychological literature. The perpetrator typically experienced a psychological rupture and fixated on a victim embodying traits they coveted: stability, beauty, success, normalcy. The investigation narrowed its focus when Rebecca mentioned a former colleague, Lily Winters, who had been terminated due to escalating erratic behavior. Lily had closely collaborated with Rebecca, often remarking on their similarities. Post-dismissal, she sent a series of unsettling emails to Rebecca. "We could be identical," one message stated. "Sometimes I feel more like you than you do." Detective Shaw secured a warrant to search Lily's residence. Their findings transformed the case from disconcerting to chilling. One room in Lily's abode had been transformed into a shrine-like replica of Rebecca's bedroom. The walls were adorned with photographs, countless snapshots of Rebecca arriving home, shopping, meeting friends, all taken without her knowledge. A closet harbored precise duplicates of Rebecca's wardrobe, while a vanity held makeup matching Rebecca's preferred brands, alongside meticulous notes on her mannerisms, speech patterns, and daily routines. The most incriminating evidence surfaced in the form of practice videos. Lily had recorded herself mimicking Rebecca's walk, gestures, and expressions. The evolution was evident. Initial attempts were clumsy and conspicuous, later iterations nearly indistinguishable from the authentic Rebecca. "She aspired to be me," Rebecca murmured upon beholding the evidence. "She was not merely imitating me, she was obliterating me." Technicians discovered sophisticated equipment for duplicating keys and replicating electronic access cards. Lily had orchestrated an elaborate system to track Rebecca's movements, including a calendar with precise forecasts of her agenda. What eluded investigators was Lily's ultimate objective. Journals found in her residence contained rambling entries that vacillated between the first and third person, occasionally referring to Rebecca as both me and her in the same paragraph. The final entry sent a chill down the investigators' spines. Soon, only one of us will remain. The stronger version will endure. When authorities moved to apprehend Lily, she had vanished. Her residence bore signs of a hasty departure, drawers left ajar, certain technology missing. A nationwide alert was issued. Rebecca was relocated to a secure location under continuous surveillance. For 3 weeks, authorities monitored every site linked to her former life. Lily never materialized. The case took a disconcerting turn when a security guard at Rebecca's former workplace reported an anomaly. Despite being on leave and under protection in a secure, safe house, Rebecca had been sighted entering the building. Surveillance footage confirmed it. A figure identical to Rebecca had accessed the premises using a valid ID card, proceeded to her former workstation, and spent 40 minutes perusing her files before exiting. The implications became stark. Lily had not absconded, she had made her move. She was now assuming Rebecca's identity, stepping into her existence while the true Rebecca remained concealed. The case remains unsolved. Lily Winters evaded capture, and Rebecca Thorne chose not to reclaim her former life, opting instead to forge a new identity in an undisclosed location. Detective Shaw preserves a photograph on her desk, 2 women strikingly similar in appearance. One is Rebecca Thorne, the other is Lily Winters. She often scrutinizes their features, seeking the nuances that set them apart, the subtle distinctions that would differentiate one from the other. The most unsettling aspect, Shaw imparts to new recruits, is not that someone can resemble you or sound like you. It is the desire to become you so intensely that they erase themselves in the process. Our identity is not just what we present to the world, it is what we safeguard most vigilantly. And sometimes we only realize its worth when someone seeks to steal it. Story 26. The tale of the new homeowners began with a peculiar quirk, the crackling of the old intercom system late at night. A relic from a bygone era, rewired but forgotten in the shadows of time. At first it was dismissed as mere static, an echo of the past lingering in the present. But one fateful night, curiosity got the best of the husband. He pressed the button, and a whisper like a ghostly breath crackled through the speaker. "Why did you come back?" The words hung in the air, sending shivers down his spine, his hands trembling in the darkness. His wife, standing behind him, denied ever uttering those haunting words. The Victorian manor, a silent sentinel among ancient oak trees, concealed secrets within its weathered exterior, contrasting with its modernized interior. Daniel and Meredith Parker, drawn to the property's rich history, had acquired it at an unexpectedly reasonable price, despite the real estate agent's uneasy demeanor during the initial tour. The intercom system, a vintage novelty linking all rooms, had captivated the Parkers, igniting their passion for the stories woven into the walls of the old house. Detective Sarah Reeves arrived at the manor, the gravel whispering beneath the tires of her unmarked vehicle. The call had come in as a routine break-in report, but a subtle nuance in the dispatcher's voice hinted at a deeper mystery waiting to unfold. Daniel Parker, his face drained of color, met Detective Reeves at the entrance, leading her through the grand foyer illuminated by a soft, flickering light. "It all began with the intercom," he recounted, his voice barely above a whisper. Static turned to whispers and then to full sentences. My wife thought I was losing my mind until she heard it too. In the dimly lit living room, Meredith sat rigid on an antique sofa, her grip tight around a steaming mug, the contents untouched. Without preamble, she revealed the unsettling discovery they had made behind a wall during a renovation project. As Daniel sought to expand the kitchen pantry, a hidden chamber was unveiled, and within it, wrapped in decaying plastic, lay a small leather-bound journal. Detective Reeves' gloved hands turning the fragile pages uncovered the intricate script of Alina, the journal's previous owner. Her words chronicled a growing dread of her husband Vincent's malevolent intentions. "The last entry dates back 30 years, Daniel explained, his voice heavy with the weight of the revelation. After that, silence. The previous owners mentioned purchasing the house from an elderly man who had relocated to a retirement community. The investigation unveiled the dark history of Vincent and Alina Blackwood, former owners of the manor. Records indicated Vincent's abrupt sale of the property following Alina's disappearance, with no trace of her existence beyond the final journal entry. A team assembled by Detective Reeves meticulously combed the property, unearthing anomalies beneath the garden shed's concrete foundation. As the ground yielded its secrets to the investigators, the truth emerged in the form of skeletal remains, a woman in her 40s bearing signs of violence to her skull. Among the bones, a gold band engraved with the words "To Alina, my eternal love," whispered of a tragic tale long buried in the shadows of time. Vincent Blackwood, now aged and residing in a care facility, faced the consequences of his heinous act. Confronted with irrefutable evidence, his chilling admission unveiled a sinister truth. She wouldn't cease her incessant chatter, Vincent confessed with an eerie calm. Always through that cursed intercom, questioning, watching. I cut the connection, but she rewired it herself, longing for a perpetual connection, no matter where I roamed in the house. I craved solitude. His vacant gaze pierced through the room, haunted by memories buried deep within the walls of the manor. During his trial, Vincent's meticulously crafted deception crumbled, his guilt undeniable. The sentencing judge, acknowledging the calculated cruelty and decades of deceit, delivered a swift verdict. Daniel and Meredith, burdened by the house's grim legacy, relinquished ownership, bidding farewell to a chapter tainted by darkness. Before their departure, they honored Alina with a solemn ceremony in the restored garden, a final tribute to a lost soul finally at peace. The intercom, witness to the tragedies of the past, was removed by the subsequent owners during renovations. Workers reported hearing echoes of static and whispers, attributing them to mere interference from their tools. Detective Reeves, closing the Blackwood case file for the last time, pondered how the house had transcended time to expose its hidden truths. The pursuit of justice had caught up with Vincent Blackwood, the echoes of Alina's voice resonating through the halls of the manor. Dubbed the house that answered back by local law enforcement, the manor stood as a silent witness to the enduring echoes of the past. Detective Reeves, on her nightly drive home, would slow by the property, the window cracked open to catch whispers carried on the wind, a reminder of a mystery solved but never forgotten. Story 27, The Intruder in the Dollhouse. She never enjoyed venturing into the attic, but when the storm brought a leak in the roof, she had no choice but to face its eerie depths. The attic was a realm of forgotten treasures, cloaked in dust and cobwebs. Amidst the shadows in the farthest corner sat an ancient dollhouse, exquisitely detailed, its miniature furniture meticulously arranged. Yet as she gazed inside, a shiver ran down her spine. The figures within were not dolls, but tiny, intricately carved replicas of her own family. Each figure placed precisely where they sat downstairs, except for one. The figure meant to represent her stood by the attic door. Rebecca Morgan traced her finger over the dollhouse roof, feeling the indent where the small wooden figure stood. A chill ran through her body, unrelated to the cold draft whispering through the rafters. The dollhouse had no place there. This wasn't her childhood home, but a rental property her family had recently moved into. The discovery led Rebecca to call law enforcement in a panic. Upon arrival at the suburban residence, officers encountered a family in distress, gathered in the living room, fearful of returning upstairs. Detective Sarah Harmon, the lead investigator, initially dismissed their concerns as a prank or the product of an overactive imagination adjusting to a new abode. "The precision struck me," Detective Harmon later recalled. Each miniature figurine captured a unique detail of every family member: the father's receding hairline, the son's hoodie, even the mother's small birthmark. The investigation took a turn when forensic teams found fingerprints on the dollhouse that did not match any family member. Even more unsettling were microscopic cameras embedded in the eyes of each miniature figure, all linked to a hidden recording system beneath the dollhouse. Analysis of the Morgan family's movements revealed a disturbing pattern. The positions of the figures in the dollhouse mirrored not just their current evening, but exact postures from different days, indicating someone had observed them long enough to learn their routines. "We realized this wasn't mere stalking," Detective Harmon explained. "The perpetrator exhibited a level of obsession rarely seen in criminal psychology." A concealed entrance to the basement was discovered behind a false wall in the pantry. Inside, investigators found evidence of someone living there before the Morgans. Food wrappers, water bottles, and a sleeping bag hinted that the intruder had been under the family's feet for weeks. The absence of forced entry puzzled investigators. Property records unveiled the house's vacancy for almost a year before the Morgans moved in. The previous elderly owners had both passed away, leaving their son to handle the estate sale and property rental. Neighbors provided sparse information during interviews. Most had noticed nothing amiss, except for an elderly lady who sporadically saw lights in the house while it stood vacant. "I assumed it was the real estate folks showing the property," she told investigators. "Never crossed my mind someone might be living there without permission." A breakthrough emerged through digital forensics. Surveillance data from the miniature cameras led investigators to an apartment across town. Inside, walls adorned with photos of the Morgan family and past house occupants were found. Journal entries documented daily routines of each family member with unsettling accuracy. Most chilling was a workshop filled with partially constructed dollhouses, each representing different homes in the vicinity. The apartment belonged to Martin Wells, the son of the former homeowners. Financial records revealed escalating debt post his parents' demise. Instead of selling the house, he had crafted a hidden living space to reside there covertly while collecting rent from unsuspecting tenants. "The dollhouse was his command center," explained the assigned forensic psychologist. Each figure embodied someone he surveilled. The figure of Rebecca by the attic door wasn't a menace, it was his acknowledgement of her discovery of his surveillance system. During interrogation, Wells remained eerily composed as he explained his actions. "They lived in my house, slept in my parents' room. I needed to ensure they respected it." When asked why he positioned the figures, he simply stated, "I wanted them to know I was always watching." Psychological assessment unveiled a complex case of possessive delusion. Unable to cope with losing his childhood home, Wells built an intricate system to retain control. The dollhouse became his way of owning both the property and its inhabitants. The Morgan family never returned to the house. Rebecca recounted that the most haunting moment wasn't finding the dollhouse, but understanding its implications. Someone watched us, measured our lives, turned us into playthings. The true horror wasn't the dollhouse itself, it was knowing that in his eyes, we were mere puppets to be manipulated and observed. Wells faced multiple charges of stalking, invasion of privacy, illegal surveillance, and trespassing. The case prompted a reevaluation of real estate disclosure laws regarding property deaths and agents' responsibilities to ensure homes were properly vacated before new occupants moved in. At sentencing, the judge acknowledged the severe violation the Morgan family endured. You didn't just invade their home, you invaded their security and freedom. You witnessed their most intimate moments and recreated them for your pleasure. What unsettles criminologists most is how long Wells might have continued unnoticed had Rebecca not stumbled upon the dollhouse. Analysis of his journals suggested he had secretly resided in homes for nearly 2 years, moving from one property to another, crafting dollhouses representing each observed family. The Morgan family eventually settled in a distant abode, but Rebecca confessed in her impact statement that she still checked closets and crawl spaces habitually. She removed all miniatures and dollhouses from their new home. Some days I feel like I'm being watched, she confessed. I wonder if somewhere, someone is still maneuvering a tiny version of me in a dollhouse I've yet to uncover.